fighting, and they were very correct to do that. So that's the benefit for the Ukrainians, is that they get more of their material out from the Odessa ports down to the Bosphorus, a bit less hazardously than they were doing in the past. I mean, so far they've got quite a lot of stuff out. I mean, the trade, at least in numbers of ships, is back up to where it was before the war started. But they have to hug the coast all the way down through the NATO countries, really, the coast of NATO-friendly states. So it's not the safest thing to do, and they'd like to open that up. So there is benefit for both of them, but more benefit for Russia than for Ukraine, if there is a complete, as it were, truce across the Black Sea.
Another important part of this ceasefire is, of course, the energy infrastructure. It seems that everyone has agreed this time that there will be a pause on attacking each other's energy infrastructure, and there are no confusions as to if one side is saying energy and infrastructure and other side is saying energy infrastructure. We know for sure it's going to be only energy infrastructure. But this time, Ukraine added a new condition to this ceasefire deal. Now, before moving forward, recently we crossed 1 million subscribers. Ever since then, we've been flooded with emails asking us questions and advice about growing a faceless YouTube channel. Even though I try my best to reply to every single email, sometimes these just take up too much of my time, or they ask the same question I have answered before. That's why I've decided to put all my YouTube advice into one training bootcamp for completely free. So if you're someone who's interested in starting your own channel, you can sign up for this bootcamp by clicking the link in the description or scanning the QR code on your screen. There, I'll share everything you need and answer any questions you have about Faceless YouTube. So sign up now, because unfortunately, unlike the YouTube videos, bootcamp is more like a Zoom call, so it's limited to just 100 people. So sign up for a slot before it gets full. Now let's get back to the video. This new condition that Ukraine put was that Ukraine wants a third-party country to make sure both Russia and Ukraine are following the rules of the ceasefire. They do not want United States to be the mediator, or I guess the enforcer of these ceasefire rules. Many people have speculated that this could be because Ukrainian officials don't really trust US as much as before, especially after the comments Steve Witkoff made just a few days ago. Now here's the statement that Ukrainian defense minister put out right after the ceasefire. Key points from the Ukraine-US meeting. All parties have agreed to ensure safe navigation and eliminate the use of force.
Dream of a brighter tomorrow with the Princess Margaret Home Lottery. Win our biggest grand prize ever, worth over $9 million. A stunning home-filled show home, custom built by PCM, designed by Brian Gluckstein, and $500,000. Over 17,000 prizes worth more than $18 million. Luxury homes, a lakeside cottage, vacations, vehicles, and more. Your ticket to fund life-saving cancer research. Carry the fire and buy your tickets at PrincessMargaretLotto.com.
And prevent the use of commercial vessels for military purposes in the Black Sea. Now here's the important bit that Ukrainian side made sure that United States did not release. Ukrainian side emphasizes that all movement by Russia of its military vessels outside of eastern part of the Black Sea will constitute violation of the spirit of this agreement and will be regarded as the violation of the commitment to ensure safe navigation of the Black Sea and threat to the national security of Ukraine. In this case, Ukraine will have full right to exercise the right to self-defense. This is where I think it needs to be clear-cut as to what is considered the eastern part of the Black Sea and what is considered the western.
Peter Zion here, coming to you from Orlando with some good news. The good news is not that I am in Orlando. It's that the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill has recently released a report that pulls together all the statistics from all the health authorities in the United States. And according to the data, at some point in 2022 or early 2023, fentanyl deaths peaked and have been falling dramatically since then, about 1/3 down on average across the country, and in North Carolina specifically down more than half. This is like the first good news we've had in the fentanyl situation in quite some time. Quick review: fentanyl is a synthetic opioid, so it is manufactured as opposed to grown and processed, which means that it can be produced faster and at a much lower cost than the natural, the organic drugs that are processed with gasoline. Anyway, Because of that,
From the
time to
first
target getting into
stirrings
the
of
system
life
is a
beneath
lot
water,
lower, and gram per
the
gram,
great
it's something like
beasts of
500
the
times as
Stone
powerful
Age,
as cocaine or
to
heroin,
man taking his
and that means
first
a lot of
upright
people have shot
steps,
up with it and
you
just
have
died.
come far.
And it has been one of the
Now
leading
begins
causes
your
of death in the United
greatest
States for
quest.
the last several years.
From this
So a
early
one-third
cradle
drop
of
is amazing
civilization
news.
on
We can
towards the stars.
probably attribute that
You
drop
chose the sunny
to
ways,
four main
Wilfrid
factors.
Laurier,
First of all,
and
the
made
Mexicans who are
cheerfulness and
producing
courtesy
this
the
stuff.
character
This is not coming
of
from
the
the
Canadian
cartels.
people.
This is coming from
Where
small
others
mom
look
and
to
pops that are
divide
basically
and
cooking
sow
this stuff up in a
mistrust,
garage.
you inspire
And those folks have not been
cooperation
interfacing
and
directly with
understanding.
customers. There's a few supply
Show the
chains for
world that a
distribution between
unified
them and their
people
customers.
can
And so it
forever
took them a
stand
while to
the
realize
test
that they
of
were just
time.
killing everybody, and that's bad for business. So when they make it into, say, pills, they have been, which are then, dissolved or crushed or whatever, they're making them less strong, so less than 1/3 of the dose that they used to have a few years ago, giving people a chance to, not die. Second, for the addicts in the United States that are dying from fentanyl, you can only die once. And so if enough addicts do this drug, then the remaining addicts are like, maybe that's not the high I'm after. Which brings us number 3. It's like, if it is the high that you're after, maybe I shouldn't just pop a pill or inject it. Maybe I should crush it, turn it into something I can smoke, and that way I can meter how much goes into me. Those 3 things combined have really contributed to a significant drop in lethality. And then finally, there's something called Narcan, which is an anti-narcotic drug that you can give to somebody who is overdosed. And it's now not just available in hospitals, you can actually get it and take it home with you. So if you have a friend or a loved one who you know is going to overdose, you can have the Narcan standing by and hopefully revive them. And those 4 factors have really helped out. Does this mean that the fentanyl crisis is over? Oh God, no. Again, it's a synthetic. You can cook it up in your garage. And even if every single drug lab in Mexico were to vaporize tomorrow, the technology is so easy. We're talking about like middle school to high school chemistry here, that it would just pop up somewhere else, like in, say, I don't know, Oklahoma, Illinois. So this is part of the drug milieu now. We're not going to get rid of it. All we can do is hope to cope with it better than we've been doing so far. Still, I'll take my good news where
Work today is broken. We're all working on too many disconnected apps, and it's killing team productivity.
It's a sweltering summer night, and suddenly everything goes dark. No power, no internet, even your phone screen refuses to light up. A citywide outage, or something worse. Stepping outside, you expect to see a few flickering streetlights, maybe a neighbor's flashlight, but no, the entire block is swallowed in darkness, as if the world itself is powered down. Well, at least there's one benefit. Without all the light pollution, you can see the skies clearly, and then you see it. Not 1, not 2, but dozens of streaking lights cutting through the atmosphere. Wait, those aren't stars, and they're coming in awfully fast. This is just the beginning of the chaos that's about to unfold on this episode of the Infographic Show. What if Earth lost all electricity, minute by minute? Minute 0. It's a light show. The worst disaster the modern world has ever seen is about to occur, but it won't be happening with a bang. Rather, a dazzling display of colors similar to the Northern Lights. Those near the Arctic Circle will see the lights dancing, but they're about to get a rude awakening. This is a massive solar storm, the biggest that has hit Earth since the 19th century. This is caused by a solar wind shockwave, and it brings with it electromagnetic energy that disrupts the Earth's magnetosphere and has the potential to knock out all electronic devices. And that means chaos on the ground and in the air. Minute 1. The first people to experience the effects of this storm will be in the air. The many unfortunate people flying through the air as the storm hits the Earth. It's estimated that the U.S. aviation industry alone ferries up to 2.9 million people each day, and hundreds of thousands are in the air at any given moment. The solar storm causing a massive blackout will immediately impact them. While the plane isn't likely to instantly go dark and plummet from the sky, since they are designed with safeguards against interference, it's likely that certain electronic devices in the plane will be disrupted. Communication and navigation systems would be knocked out, with even the most advanced pilots flying blind. With so many planes in the air at the same time, collisions and other accidents are inevitable, and that's not even considering smaller planes without the same level of protection. And as people step outside from their darkened houses, they will no doubt see dozens of planes, big and small, falling from the sky. In some areas, this would be an ominous sign, and in others, a total disaster. And it is just beginning. Minute 2. Across the world, people start to realize that nothing is turning on. The house is dark, of course, But this isn't just a standard downed power line. While most independent devices like cell phones are still on, assuming they're charged, there's likely to be no cell phone service as the towers have been disrupted. Any device that was plugged in at the time might have been fried by a power surge, and even old-school technology like radios may have been disrupted. For now, everyone will be in the dark, figuratively and literally. But there's one place where the chaos will be more intense than anywhere else. Minute 3. Most people will no doubt be struggling to figure out their next move, but doctors and nurses won't have that luxury. A power outage will be life-threatening in hospitals, which is why all hospitals in developed areas have backup generators. Whether these will keep operating in the event of a solar storm will depend on the strength of the storm and how the generators are hooked up. But lives hang in the balance. At any given moment, there are over 600,000 people in hospitals in the United States alone. Many patients may be there for recovery or observation, and they'd be fine in the event of a power outage, but anyone on artificial respiration or any other life support would be in an immediate risk of death if the power goes out. The same goes for anyone on the operating table, as hospitals rely heavily on high-tech imaging now. The hospital would immediately have to go into triage mode if there's a power outage, figuring out who they can save and how, and praying that the generators kick in. And at one location, it is all hands on deck. Minute 4. The moment the power failed, there was no hesitation. The President of the United States was immediately secured, whisked away to a fortified compound deep underground or in a classified location where layers of backup generators ensured that critical systems stayed online. The President's first act will be to have his advisors fill him in on what's going on. The problem is, few people will fully understand that. Most communications are down, and while secure channels between world leaders exist, it's likely many of them will be temporarily disrupted. It's likely he'll only be able to get in touch with a few who have the same level of equipment as the United States, but a clear message will get through. This isn't an attack, it's a natural disaster, and everyone is in the same boat. Minute 5. On the ground, the effects of the blackout are hitting hard. People who stayed in their homes are mostly fine, but those who were on the road at the time are seeing their commute turn into a nightmare. While cars are still working, in most cases, although certain internet-connected features may be down, the same can't be said for another critical part of driving: traffic lights. Drivers will be driving blind without GPS or street lights, and collisions will be inevitable and frequent. The chief of police sends out his men to try to manually direct traffic, but this will be like using a thimble to put out a forest fire. There will be tens of thousands of cars on the road in every major city, and no way to patrol every intersection. And they're not the only first responders who will be on the call. Minute 6. One of the biggest dangers of the blackout will be in the immediate effects. The sudden power surge caused by the solar flare will cause countless electric devices to overload, causing sparks and flames. With emergency lines down and fires erupting at power stations, transformers, and buildings across the cities, firefighters will have no time to strategize, only to react. Forced back to the basics, they'll roll out every available truck, tanks filled to the brim, and follow the flames. But similar to the police and to the doctors, odds are good that they'll be fighting an uphill battle against a disaster of a massive scale. And as we all know, humans never make disasters worse. Minute 10. Panic has started to spread. While meteorologists warned about a solar storm and the possibility of disruption, no one saw it being this bad, and besides, few people were actually paying attention. When the power went out, people were worried, but when their appliances started sparking and their cell phone service went out, well, that's when people realized things could get very bad. And they reacted the only way that made sense. They went looting. Whenever there's a crisis, there are some people who take advantage of it. Major stores likely responded to the blackout by evacuating their stores in an orderly fashion. But many people in the store likely just grabbed their goods and ran. After all, the cameras are down, and that was only the beginning of the problem. As the crisis went on, locals no doubt started running in and grabbing whatever they could in case this was a long-term blackout. Hope no one was looking for toilet paper on the shelves after this. While the police would normally be on patrol for any sign of criminal behavior, this is likely priority number 259 right now, especially since something else is going on, something that could turn this disaster into an apocalypse. Minute 30. There are 440 nuclear plants around the world, all of them secured by a complex network of fail-safes designed to prevent meltdowns. These include offline generators designed to keep the plants running in the event of a catastrophic blackout like this one. The problem is not all plants are created equal. The 54 plants in the United States, located across 28 states, are among the most secure in the world. The one nuclear incident in the U.S., 3 Mile Island, was resolved with no loss of life and security has only gotten more intense since. The plants in the UK, France, and China have similar technology, and Japan's plants have gotten an upgrade in technology and failsafes since the devastating Fukushima meltdown. But the same cannot be said across the world. One of the biggest sources of nuclear power around the world is the former Soviet Union. Russia and its former satellite states currently have a total of over 60 nuclear reactors spread across Eastern Europe and Central Asia, with 36 in Russia itself. But these reactors are much older than the average, and many are located in isolated regions where they may not have been as well maintained. As nuclear technicians start to survey the plants in the aftermath of the global blackout, Russian inspectors will have the hardest challenge ahead of them, and it's very likely that meltdowns will begin, poisoning significant areas of the region with no way to effectively warn the surrounding population. The one saving grace is that most Russian nuclear plants are not in population-dense areas, a lesson learned from Chernobyl. It's becoming an unmitigated disaster, and emotions are running high. Hour 1. If there is one thing humans do well when faced with a disaster, it's blame others. A disaster like this will likely send paranoia sky high, and while scientists will know by now that this is a natural event, they'll have no way of communicating this to the masses with TVs and the internet.
It is not the mountain
but even
we
if they
conquer,
could, would it work?
it's ourselves.
The odds are, in the United States, the Democrats and Republicans would each find someone to blame. This wouldn't have happened if billionaires were taxed. But if there's one thing for certain, people would be at each other's throats. And that's not even taking into consideration the international implications. When a catastrophe of this scale unfolds, world leaders won't assume it's an accident, they will fear an attack. Generals in war rooms across the globe will be scrambling for intel, devising countermeasures, and whispering urgent recommendations in the ears of presidents and prime ministers. No weapons will be launched tonight, the one saving grace of this blackout. But things are going to get worse before they get better. Hour 10. For most people, they were smart enough to stay inside during the blackout and go to bed when it became clear there wasn't going to be a quick resolution, and that means they're only seeing the full scale of the chaos now. As the morning dawns, the power and internet services are not back yet. The government may have gotten some emergency messages through using push notifications and government systems running on generators, but anyone whose phone has run out of charge won't be getting them. So for many people, the window outside their home will be painting a terrifying picture, and people are about to be reminded just how much of their lives depend on electricity. It's likely a long, uncomfortable night for most people, as home heating systems need power to operate. This even goes for gas furnaces, as all modern homes have electric components to regulate the heat and ensure stability and safety. The cold weather during the blackout means food is not likely to spoil immediately, but you better drink that milk fast with breakfast. The good news is, a few other things will work, at least for now. Most toilets will work without power because they primarily use gravity and water pressure to flush. This will be one tiny convenience of modern civilization that people can enjoy for now, as long as their toilet is above the sewer line. Of course, the sewer system itself has electric components to regulate it, so trouble may lie ahead. Uncertainty is the order of the day, and it's only going to get weirder. Hour 15. We've all had that day where there was a blizzard outside and the boss wanted to know when we were coming in. But this isn't that day. Everyone is in the same boat here, as long as they don't have a functioning generator. But with all the power out across the world, everyday life is simply canceled. No one's going to work, no one's going to school, and so as the day begins, an eerie hush falls over populated areas, only punctuated by the occasional sounds of fires, explosions, and gunshots. Because human nature isn't taking a day off. As the second day without power dawns, people are becoming more and more paranoid and determined to protect what's theirs. And if they don't have something, they might be even more determined to get it. Looting might be the first order of the day, but this is more common at night. As the day begins, people are likely hunkering down at home, and anyone who tries a break-in might be in for an unpleasant surprise. Of course, there are some people who might be taking the higher road and trying to help their neighbor by distributing excess goods, but the odds are most people are simply looking out for themselves and their families. But the government is about to make its presence known. Hour 24. As darkness falls over the city on the second day of no power, there's a change. This time, the people aren't left to their own devices. The limited communications available to the government have allowed them to organize, and they're out in full force. The National Guard has been deployed with strict instructions to keep order. They want to prevent looting and mass car accidents like the ones that hit last night. And to do that, they've instituted a curfew. The only problem is, with a total power outage, how are they going to convey that to the people? The old-fashioned way, that's how. It's what's going to be an alarming sight to the average person. Military platoons are now roaming the streets, barking orders out of an old-fashioned megaphone. They're instructing people to stay in their homes after dark, something most people are happy to obey. After all, the uncertainty out there is scary, and there are going to be bad actors taking advantage of the situation just like there were last night. The chaos of those early days won't be heavily chronicled because few people have electronic devices that are working, which means teenagers with 10% battery life left might be taking pictures that become history. And all across the city, some people are wondering, is this just a disruption or the new status quo? While last night's looting was largely a spontaneous affair caused by panic, it's not what the authorities are met with tonight. The gangs roaming the streets are largely masked and armed with instruments for smashing windows. They target any institution that might still have some goods on the shelves, and they're also going after any place they see with a generator, hoping to steal it. While these gangs are a small group of bad actors, they are enough to create a climate of fear among the people of the city. But every crisis creates villains and heroes. Hour 28. While many people are asleep or at least trying to keep warm throughout the night, some people are working through it, namely the doctors. The hospitals are shut down, with the complex network that keeps them running in shambles, but that doesn't mean the healers aren't hard at work. Medical workers have created field hospitals around the city, providing what care they can to both those with ailments and those who have been injured in the initial crisis. But there's only so much they can do. Doctors are providing first aid, emergency medicine, even ad hoc surgeries when needed. Patients are being brought to them with severe internal injuries from car crashes and burns from fires, and the limited supplies they have give them few options. They're forced to triage many of the hopeless cases, and the full total of casualties won't be known for a very long time, because unfortunately the victims will keep coming.
Hey, I just made my very first purchase on Wish.com, and let me just say that you need to be very careful about where and how you shop online. So a friend told me about the Wish app, and they've got everything you could ever imagine. And a whole lot of things that you could have never imagined, like a watch with a lighter, or a shaving apron. Yeah, I have no use for most of this stuff, but that's when I saw an electric mountain bike for only $12. $12 for an electric bike? What is the catch? Is there one? It says that it's a brand new 26-inch
May the forces of evil become confused while you're out.
Tires for adults, 7 speeds, steel frame, front and rear brakes, headlights, the full package. Had I just found the deal of the century or what? I had been wanting an e-bike for the longest time, and now I'll finally be able to cruise through my neighborhood and be the coolest kid in town. And I know that this bike isn't exactly a Trek brand. In fact, most of the items on Wish.com aren't top quality. They're knockoffs. They're manufactured in China for cheap and then sold through drop shippers here in the States. If you don't know what drop shipping is, it's when businesses will sell products to buyers without actually stocking the items themselves. Instead, they'll purchase the item from a third party and have it shipped directly to their customer. So let's say that a factory in China is making these gadgets and selling them for $3 each.
The great thing about the Google Career Certificate is no experience is necessary. We are teaching you literally the foundation.
A dropshipper can then set up a website promoting them as these amazing high-quality gadgets for $15 each. And when an order arrives on the website, the dropshipper purchases a $3 gadget and the manufacturer sends the product to the customer and the dropshipper pockets the extra $12. And the dropshipper may never actually even see the product. They make their money by marketing the item. And now they've certainly got my attention. But even if this thing is made in China, how are they making it and selling it for only $12? I mean, the material alone is like 10 times that. And who in the world is going to ship this thing from China to the United States for only $3? My curiosity was killing me, so I said I am definitely ordering this bike. And this is the first time I've ever ordered something from this site, and if you're anything like me, anytime you enter your credit card online, you can't help but feel a little uneasy, especially when you're only paying $15 for a bike. And that's why I've started doing my online purchases with Privacy, who I'm thrilled to have sponsor this video. Privacy allows you to generate virtual numbers to act as your credit card. It's a unique number that will mask your bank information so you never have to worry about giving it out to people you don't know online. And when you generate your virtual number, you can decide who can charge the card, for how much, and how often. And you can close cards at any time. I especially love using Privacy when I sign up for free trials because you can make sure that you are never accidentally billed twice or upgraded to another service without your consent. You just set a spending limit to what you should be paying, and you'll be notified if you're ever charged more than this. It works great for me, and I think that you're gonna love it too. So head to privacy.com/pleasantgreen. That's privacy.com/pleasantgreen to me. And then on May 13th, I saw that it was out for delivery and scheduled to be delivered. I could not wait. Eventually, I got a notification that it was delivered to my mailbox. How do they fit an entire bike in a mailbox? Or did they even send me a bike at all? So I went to go check it out, and there it was. Okay, so I have a bike light. But where's the bike? The item that I ordered was clearly a bike. This light was just an included feature. And I know what you're all thinking, Ben, you just didn't read the fine print closely enough. You ordered a light. Well, okay, let's just read it together, shall we? It says Type B Mountain Beach Electric Bicycle. Conquer any off-road trail with ease with the Steel Frame Mountaineer bike with supersized all-terrain knob tires. It goes on, and it says this bike shipped ready to be assembled, size for adult riders 5'6" to 6 feet tall, and has a limited lifetime warranty. Type A, 1 bicycle riding lights and 1 USB data cable. Okay, there's nothing here that says this bike isn't included. This is a product listing for a bike. It's the dominant image on the ad. Why would they list the very specifics of the bike if this product wasn't in fact a bike? I am so mad. I waited 2 weeks for this, and you guys. Here's the latest tracking info I have. And I said I have indeed received the item, and it asks if there's a problem with the order. And I'm like, yeah. And I selected item did not meet my expectations. And it said, thanks for letting us know. Can you tell me what is incorrect about your order so I can make things right? And I said the item is missing essential parts. It then said, please upload 1 or more photos of the items described for the issue in detail so we can best assist you. And I'm like, there's no bike. And I uploaded a photo of my light and its package. It then said, I have sent your support message and a Wish representative will respond to you within 2 to 3 days. Well, it only took a few hours for Wish to respond and say, hello Ben, thank you for contacting Wish. It must be inconvenient to know that you got a bike light instead of the electric bike as described. We apologize for the inconvenience with your purchase. Upon review of your order, we have gone ahead and issued a full refund for this item. Please allow up to 10 business days for your refund to process back to your original form of payment. Okay, well if they're that quick to issue a refund, it makes me think that this isn't a rare occurrence. It's almost like they've got a ton of misleading product descriptions being listed on their site, and they're just hoping that people don't go through the hassle of complaining. And if you're a seller who can convince a couple of thousand people that they're getting a bike instead of a light, you can probably get away with a good amount of cash. And soon after this, the product description changed and it labeled the item as a light, not a bike. Okay, so who's behind this? Who's the seller? I look at this packaging and I see that there's a return address to James Charles Lessmore Limited in Carson, California. He must be the dropshipper using Wish to feature and advertise his products while some folks in China are the ones making cheap stuff and shipping them. And they probably don't even know anything about what's going on here. They're just doing what they're told, while some guy in California is making all the money and misleading customers on Wish. So I go to Google to see what people are saying about this Lessmore company, and all I see is scam, scam, scam. There are over 100 complaints from people upset about the products they're receiving from this guy. So why is Wish partnering with people like this? And what is going on Glen Curtis Street in California? I don't know, but this should be a warning for you if you ever shop at Wish, because although you may get some great deals, you'll probably get some duds. I mean, what might you expect from a drone that's only 50 cents? Or a 14-karat gold ring that's completely free? There's a lot of questions here, but if you're going to shop at Wish, you better be prepared for deceptive advertising, long wait times, and apparently no quality control. So maybe in a follow-up video we can try to dive a little bit deeper into this scam, because I don't have a whole lot of answers to this one. But what I do have is this bike light from mainland China, and maybe it's not so bad after all. I'm gonna go give this thing a try, but I would love to hear from you about your experience with Wish. Did you get everything that you wanted and more? Who do you think is holding the strings on this operation? The dropshippers? Wish? The Chinese? Let me know in the comments below, and I will see you in the next one.
If every time you see an ad, you just wanna, hi-ya, you need to download Pi. It's a free Chrome extension that blocks ads on all your favorite sites. It even blocks ads that you didn't even know were ads. Imagine being able to scroll and stream completely uninterrupted. And that's not even the best part. If you opt in, Pi will give you cashback rewards for ads that you do see. And if you're still not convinced, just ask the thousands of users who love Pi. So if you're tired of constant ads, check out Pi today.
Fruit on the bottom.
Astro yogurt with fruit on the bottom. Seriously.
Who deserves more credit than the wife of a coal miner?
I'm glad that the Liberals put this attack out today. Really glad. Because there's something that's really been worrying me.
The Globe and Mail released a hit job today on the Conservatives, one that CSIS has already debunked. However, it seems that Pierre was just waiting for a reporter to ask him about it today at a press conference, and he responded to that by playing an ace he's had up his sleeve this whole time: the links between Mark Carney and China.
Let's take a look. CSIS alleges India organized support for Poilievre's 2022 Conservative leadership bid. Now, when we came across this, we were really confused as to why this was even a story, because this had already been talked about in the Hogue Commission, and it was literally a nothing burger. But isn't it interesting how something like this is released on the second day of the election, a day after Mark Carney
got blasted by all the opposition parties and people in Quebec for not joining the TVA debate. So it's very interesting that this article ended up in the Globe and Mail.
Interesting is one word for it.
Let's take a look.
Agents of India and their proxies allegedly meddled in the 2022 election of Pierre Poilievre as Conservative Party leader as part of a larger effort to cozy up to politicians of all parties, according to a source with top secret clearance. The source said the Canadian Security Intelligence Service learned that the Indian agents were involved in raising money and organizing within the South Asian community for Mr. Poilievre during the leadership race, which he won handedly. But the CSIS assessment did not indicate that this effort was done in a sweeping and highly organized way, the source said. Mr. Poilievre won the first ballot with 68% of the vote. CSIS also did not have evidence that Mr. Poilievre or members of his inner circle were aware of the alleged actions of India's agents and their proxies, said the source, who had a national security clearance to see top secret reports. The Globe and Mail is not identifying the source because they were not authorized to disclose the classified information publicly. CSIS did not share this information with Mr. Poilievre, the source said, because he does not have the necessary security clearance to access secret documents and receive classified briefings on foreign interference activities in Canada. Mr. Poilievre is the only federal party leader who has declined an offer to obtain a security clearance. What a hit piece! I mean, all of this information was already made public through the Hogue report, but I think what is most concerning here is how they had to harp on it again that Poilievre does not have a security clearance in order to receive this information. Well, here's the thing. Whether an individual has security clearance or not isn't even relevant here, because they can receive something called a TRM, or threat reduction measure. It's a report that's typically given to them by CSIS, and it describes any actions against them, whether or not the person is directly involved or even has knowledge of it.
Now, the dirtiest part about this opening part of the article is it says CSIS didn't inform Poilievre because he did not have security clearance to receive these documents, and then goes on to say that he's the only one of the leaders that hasn't. Here's why this is dirty. Because this incident that they're talking about took place when Pierre wasn't even leader. He was running to be Conservative leader. So that's the first part. The second part is this occurred in 2022. Now, these briefings and security clearance was only offered to the party leaders, in 2023 by Justin Trudeau, towards the end of it, after receiving a whole bunch of pressure from Poilievre, from, ironically, Jagmeet Singh, and from Yves Blanchette of the Bloc. So for them to just lump this all into one paragraph is really, really dishonest from a journalist perspective. Like, the Globe and Mail is sometimes pretty balanced, but this is really, really dirty to just throw that in there as an implication. Like, it's dirty. But here's probably the most important part of this entire article.
In a statement Monday, CSIS spokesperson Lindsay Sloan said that the agency testified during the Hogue inquiry that there was no reason to believe, quote, impacted candidates would have been aware of the alleged support, end quote, from India during the 2022 Conservative leadership race.
They also went on to testify in the Hogue Commission that they also believe that the interference had no impact on the outcome of the Conservative leadership race. So let's just recap here, folks. So this is a major story that had to be broken today that we already knew the contents of from the Hogue Commission back when it was released. And the contents were this. India tried to interfere in the leadership race. They did so in a disorganized way. The Conservatives didn't know. Pierre Poilievre didn't know. CSIS didn't brief them because they didn't have access, because they couldn't have access, because they wouldn't have been granted access at that point in time, and it didn't impact the leadership race whatsoever. So the question of the Globe and Mail is, why the hell is this even a story? Oh, right, because that's somebody that you're talking about with top secret clearance. Folks, that's not necessarily somebody in CSIS. That could be somebody in the Trudeau-Carney cabinet. That could be from Privy Council. If they haven't revoked Trudeau's actual security status could have come from him. Guess what? Mark Carney has top secret clearance right now, so it could have been him. Now, the likely scenario here, we have no evidence to prove this, but the likely scenario here is that Carney took such a kick to the face yesterday based on his press conferences and what he said and didn't say, and the fact that he pulled out of the TVA issue, is he wanted the media to change the page on this. So they leaked, or not even leaked, but encouraged the Globe and Mail to write this story in order to try to change the conversation from Carney can't speak French to, look, Pierre is possibly under the influence of the Indian government, and oh look, he's irresponsible because he's still not getting his security clearance. So that is where this hit piece has come out, and it's gross, man. Now,
it is gross because the majority of left-leaning people that I'm seeing on social media are all going back to the security clearances. This was even before this article had come out, because the media has done such a job of spinning it in a way that they make it sound like Pierre Poilievre is incapable of getting a security clearance or refuses to get a security clearance because he believes he may not pass. The reality is that Pierre has had a security clearance in the past and will get a security clearance again when he becomes prime minister.
Right. Ironically, the only person who seems to agree with Pierre Poilievre about this was the guy who was the leader of the official opposition, Tom Mulcair. Again, we don't agree with Tom on everything, but we agree with him on this, and that it would effectively muzzle him. So, anyhow, Pierre was asked about this today, and boy, oh boy, was he ready.
Carry the fire with the new Princess Margaret Home Lottery. Win our biggest grand prize ever, worth over $9 million. An Oakville show home, custom built by PCM, designed by Brian Gluckstein, and $500,000. PrincessMargaretLotto.com.
Thank you. Next question.
Hi, Pierre. I'm Surya from Y Media.
Yes, sir.
So, Globe and Mail has done a story on election interference on Conservative leadership campaign. What are your comments on that?
Well, first of all, let's quote from that Globe and Mail article. I'm going to quote here. CSIS also did not have evidence that Mr. Poilievre or members of his inner circle were aware of these alleged actions. Then I'm going to quote the Hogue Commission, and I quote, "The Commission heard testimony about allegations of the government India interference in the Conservative Party leadership race. CSIS witnesses noted that they had no reason to believe the impacted candidates would have been aware of the alleged support." Let's be honest. I won the leadership fair and square. Even my political competitors, like Mr. Patrick Brown, have publicly testified under oath that that was the case. But I'm glad that the Liberals put this attack out today. Really glad. Because there's something that's really been worrying me.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is a man who is about to unleash a political nuclear bomb on Mark Carney. Like, it just feels like he's been saving this for a rainy day. And it may not have been raining. Looks like it was snowing, but seems like that was good enough.
After Justin Trudeau named Mark Carney his economic advisor, giving him massive power over public policy in Canada, Mr. Carney went over for meetings in Beijing. That's the positive aspect. Where he just had secret talks with the deputy governor of the Chinese central bank. 2 weeks later, Brookfield got a $250 million loan. What did they talk about? What did Mr. Carney in his role as Trudeau's economic advisor offer China? Why would he be having secret meetings with top government-controlled bankers about getting a $250 million loan while he was supposed to be acting in Canada's interest as the Prime Minister's economic advisor? Why would he be collaborating with a hostile foreign regime that we have since learned executed 4 Canadians and took numerous Canadians hostage for a lengthy period of time? And given that Mr. Carney knows that he still owns massive financial interests in Brookfield, which owes a $250 million to a Chinese state-controlled bank? How do we know he's not going to act against our interests in favor of his financial interests? Why didn't he stand in front of this microphone and confess to Canadians that he owes the Chinese government that kind of money? Is this why he's covering up his financial interests? And given that China has murdered our people, taken our people hostage, how is he ever going to stand up to foreign interference when he is so financially compromised? We have never in our history had a weak, out-of-touch leader so terribly compromised and conflicted, whose interests go against our national interests. And I call on Mr. Carney right now to come before a microphone today and explain if this loan is still in place and if he still has those Brookfield assets that he had up until a few weeks ago. Because we cannot trust someone. Could you imagine, while you're supposed to be advising Canada's Prime Minister on the well-being of our economy, going to a foreign regime that had executed Canadian citizens, taken Canadians hostage, that it had already been public that they had interfered in multiple elections. They've done incursions into our northern waters. Mark Carney will never be able to protect our national interests because he has massive financial conflicts of interest overseas. What we need now is not to give the Liberals a fourth term with a weak and compromised leader. What we need is a Prime Minister who will put Canada first for a change.
Wow. Okay, there's a lot in there, and there's a lot of implications in here, and it makes me think that they've had this just waiting for a while, and this isn't necessarily brand new information, but it will be brand new information to the general public. Mm-hmm. And you may be wondering, well, why haven't the Conservatives talked about this till then? Well, I think there's a couple of reasons. So number one, he talked about this $250 million loan that he got from China. If you've watched our interview with Sam Cooper recently, Sam Cooper talked about this in that interview and talked about this as one of the reasons that Mark Carney is so financially obligated to China. So now it's not just Sam Cooper that's talking about that. Bloomberg actually wrote about something as well, and it confirms Pierre's timeline here. So this is an article from November 2024. This is 2 months after Mark Carney accepted publicly the role of financial advisor with Justin Trudeau. So this says Brookfield Asset Management, which is Carney's company, is in talks with banks to refinance a loan that had backed its purchase of a Shanghai-based office tower complex 5 years ago, according to people familiar with the matter. The Canadian asset manager has an offshore senior loan of around $700 million due year-end that funded its purchase of the mixed-use property site from Greenland Hong Kong Holdings Limited in 2019, said the people, asking not to be identified as the matter is private. The overall financing package comprises offshore and onshore components. The size of the new offshore piece in discussion could be over $900 million, and Brookfield is in the process of getting bank commitments, said one of the people. Meanwhile, the company has secured a 15-year onshore loan of 1.96 billion won, or $250 million that we've been talking about, from the Bank of China that pays an annual interest rate of around 4%, the person said. A spokesperson for Brookfield declined to comment. Bank of China didn't immediately offer comment. So, folks, Brookfield has a bunch of financial interests in real estate in China.
Therefore, our Prime Minister has a bunch of financial interests in real estate in China.
So, this comes back to, why would the Conservatives be kind of dropping this now? Well, here's a reason. They probably assumed that Mark Carney wasn't going to be talking about his assets in the public, didn't want them to know, and were waiting to have him already submit that to the Ethics Commissioner. Because once he submits that, ethics commissioner already has all that information. So if that includes some of this stuff, then that's essentially quote unquote locked in, and that will become public later. So they wouldn't want to start talking about that and kind of allow Mark Carney time to move the shells around and maybe divest himself of some of this stuff so that when it does become public, that's not going to be there. So now, because we're in the electoral period, that has already been submitted, and at this point, Mark Carney can't really do anything. He can't really do anything, and if he does, that's fine, but his original disclosure is already with the ethics commissioner. So it potentially puts him in quite the bind and maybe even a panic mode for what the next questions are going to be, because he's already said, all right, come and talk about this. And this is the problem, right? Because you have a guy that has financial interest in this package. We don't know what it is, and we won't know what it is until potentially after the election, unless Mark Carney chooses to disclose this. And he could be financially obligated to the tune of $250 million to a nation. Now think about this, because all the liberals have been talking about is the tariffs that have come on us from the United States, 25%. They're not talking about the 100% tariff that China just put on us. I wonder why that is.
Maybe because somebody's financially beholden to the Chinese government, is it?
Right. And the question is what else is there? And Pierre makes a valid point. You accepted a job as a financial advisor to the Prime Minister of Canada. Why was one of the first things that you did is jet off to China and secure a $250 million loan for your own company? 2 months before Justin Trudeau resigns, and about 2.5 months before you launch your leadership race.
But you know, the thing that upsets me the most, I think, is that many more Canadians will see this story about Pierre and what had happened in 2022 with the leadership race and the fact that he doesn't have, or he does have a security clearance. All government employees have a security clearance, but that he did not get the NSICOP security clearance. And they will see that instead of this story with Mark Carney. So we're asking you, MP Nation, to please help push this out. When you're talking to people, please make them aware of this, because this is huge.
My kids are always asking me to cook French fries and stuff,
Right.
but I'm scared now because what if a fire breaks out?
'Cause I can show you better than I can tell you. You're cooking,
So
right? And
yeah.
You got, you're pregnant. You got the belly in the way.
Yeah.
We've got to prepare here.
Timber! So I'm trying to get the bulk of the tree out of the way first, and then I got to get down in here. These hydraulic lines are actually grown through the tree, so we're going to have to do some whittling to not break our hydraulic lines. They're in terrible shape anyways. I'm sure we're going to have to replace them, but it'd be nice if I didn't have to do that before I got it out of here. This thing's a beast, but a chainsaw would have been the better tool.
Matt's trying to kill the camera guy today. And that's where I was. Thanks, buddy.
You moved.
Like, you didn't yell timber.
You moved before it timbered. I wonder what Kesh is doing today. I think OSHA would call this a trip hazard. I just call it a grapevine. Oh, we got one there. Should have brought a chainsaw. Man, that stack is not leaving me feeling very good. Oh, there's definitely a hole into the stack there. Oh no! This mission has just gone from feeling good to feeling questionable. That is not good, folks. This could be proving to be a much bigger project than I was hoping.
There's a lot of dirt under there.
They got a whole island with it.
Yeah.
Comes with real estate.
There's a lot of weight up there yet.
Sweet. But she had to work to get out of there. Look at, this was all the stuff that was grown up through the rip that we cut off last time. We're on our 4th bucket of oil now.
Steam hisses from the ground.
But I think with this bucket, she's going to be all ready to go. Ready to take this thing on a big stripping job, see?
Okay, check this out. We just found the easiest way to convert an old bicycle into an e-bike. My wife electrified this cruiser bike with this gizmo called Clip. It takes less than 10 seconds to install, no tools needed. The 450 watt motor accelerates up to 15 miles an hour, has a range of up to 12 miles, and even has regen braking. Okay, check this out. We just found the easiest way to convert an old bicycle into an e-bike. My wife electrified this cruiser bike with this gizmo called Clip. It takes
Want to break into cybersecurity but don't have experience? The Google Cybersecurity Certificate uses real-world scenarios.
Howdy folks, welcome to Module 2 of the CompTIA A+ course. As you can see, this is based on the 1200 series of A+, and today's module is called Installing Motherboards and Connectors. Now of course, this title alone doesn't tell us everything we need to know about this module, so if you want a more accurate idea of what's going to be in this module, that you can find in the video description down below, with very nice convenient timestamps to help you jump ahead to specific topics if you're just looking for something specific. Now folks, this module consists of 3 main sections today, so everything we'll be covering will be divided between these 3 sections. Now the 3 sections for today is cables and connectors. Now guys, these cables and connectors are not cables and connectors like network cables, no. These are the cables and connectors one would find inside of a computer case. So these will be the cables that connect to your motherboard, your hard drive, those kinds of things. It's the cables you would find inside of your case. The second main section will be motherboards.
Now, on its own, that sounds pretty vague, so you'll see there's actually a lot of topics inside of that section. And then the third and the last main section for today, folks, will be legacy cable types. Now, for those of you that don't know yet, the word legacy means something is old. This can be old hardware, it could be old software, software-wise, this can be operating systems, or it can be actual software. So it only means there's no longer support for it. It's stuff that you're probably going to have a hard time fixing, or you're not going to find spare parts for it, no patches, no updates, that kind of stuff. So there you have it, folks. That is the 3 main sections we'll be diving in today. Now, before we jump into that first main section, folks, if you haven't done it already, show this video and show the channel some love by giving this video a like. It doesn't just help this video and the channel, it also helps other people out there that cannot afford to pay for study material like this. So by giving this a like, the video will pop up in front of more people, and then obviously you'll be helping more people that can't afford to pay for studies. And of course, if you'd like to know when Module 3 of this course goes live or any of my other content, then maybe consider subscribing yourself. Who knows? Right, folks, let's go jump into that first main section. Alright folks, starting with the first section in this module, cables and connectors. Now, the first topic we're going to dive into in this section, guys, is personal computers. Now, at first glance, you're probably wondering, what the heck does that have to do with cables and connectors inside a box? You remember I said in the beginning, the title of the module does not tell you everything that's going to be in a module. The same can be said about the titles of these sections. So when I say cables and connectors, yes, for the most part, that's what you're going to find in this section, but it's not going to be the only stuff you will find in this section. Now, starting with personal computers, guys, what is the system case? The system case, guys, for those of you who don't know, is what you would put everything into, where you would find all the internal components, the organs, if you will, of your computer case. You get 2 kinds. You get an all-in-one, and you get a tower case. Now, in terms of an all-in-one, these are quite rare. There's a picture for you guys of what one might look like. At first glance, this will look like a screen. It'll look like a normal computer monitor, but if you look a little bit closer, you'll see a lot of these are actually a lot thicker. It looks like a very thick, oversized computer monitor. And that, guys, is because this whole screen is, in fact, your computer. It's not just a screen. It is a computer. That's why it's called an all-in-one. So your motherboard, the hard drive, the processor, absolutely everything of your machine is in that screen. It's called an all-in-one. These are generally more popular with office work. If you want to do gaming and stuff, this is not ideal. You know, obviously, it's not going to have proper cooling. It's not going to have room for proper expansion and all that. So this is generally more intended for your normal office work environment where you might not have a lot of room for a computer case, you know, that kind of stuff. Now, speaking of a computer case, this is what a tower case looks like, guys. That's pretty much a normal tower case. You can see this one actually still has an optical drive there at the top. I mean, can you believe it? And when's the last time you've seen a computer come out with an optical drive? If you go to any tech store nowadays and you try and buy yourself a laptop or a desktop, good luck finding one that comes with an optical drive. That would be an example of legacy hardware. Stuff that doesn't get made anymore, stuff that doesn't get used anymore. Now, guys, this is a standard tower case. You can see it's got a start button in the front. Sometimes you might get lucky, you might get a restart button. There's your front panel ports. You've got USB normally. You'll have your audio jack. You've got your mic in. You've got your earphones out there. You know, your audio jack out there. Now, usually it's common to find these in the front of the case, but you can sometimes actually find these on the top of the case. You know, it depends on the case. If you go look at these fancy gaming cases you find, a lot of them, these little ports would actually be on the top of the case. The power button will even sometimes be on the top of the case. So we call these the front panel ports and the front panel features. So those buttons, the start button, the restart button and stuff, that's your front panel features. And the ports, those USB ports, the mic and audio and all that, that is your front panel ports, guys. Now just to show you guys that this can't possibly be at the top of the case, there's another picture for you guys. So this one, it's kind of sort of at the top, not completely, but it's close enough. So there's really going to be cases where sometimes you'll find it on the top of the computer case, other times you'll find it at the front of the computer case. But if you've got yourself a gaming computer case, I can almost guarantee you it's going to be somewhere at the top of the computer case. Anyway, folks, let me get this picture out of the way. Let's talk about the side of the computer case, the side panel. So if you were to go and turn this computer case around, maybe flip it on its side, and remove the side panel, what would we see? Here is a picture for you guys of more or less what you can expect to see when you were to go and remove the side panel of a computer case. This is not the latest stuff. I mean, here at the bottom right, for instance, you can see those are hard drive bays. All these new, more modern computer cases don't actually have these hard drive bays. Those are the old mechanical hard drive bays. Nowadays, you'll find machines that are using solid-state drives, or they will go and use what we call an M.2 slot on your motherboard. Those kinds of hard drives are much smaller and much faster. They actually fit onto the motherboard. So since these hard drives are so small and so fast, we don't actually have a need for these special bays anymore where we'll go put these hard drives. There at the top right-hand side, guys, there is where you go put your optical drives, if you still have one. But nowadays, if you go buy yourself a new modern computer case, I can almost guarantee you will not find these bays on optical drive. They're not going to be there. Bottom left, guys, that is your PSU, which is short for power supply unit. Now, if you've got yourself a gaming computer case, you're more than likely going to find this power supply unit at the bottom left. Or should I say the back bottom of the computer case. If you've got yourself a normal office computer case, these are most likely going to be at the top of the case. Top back, or in this picture, will be the top left-hand side of this case. So in reality, guys, it actually doesn't matter where you find this power supply. At the end of the day, if you look at gaming cases, the only reason why they're at the bottom is because you can go and hide it at the bottom. It's out of sight. It makes the gaming case look neater. It makes it look cooler, cleaner, that kind of stuff. But in reality, it really does not matter where you have this power supply, guys, as long as the cables are long enough to reach the various components that they need to go and plug into. These components will be things like your motherboard, the graphics card. If you've got those old hard drives, maybe you can plug into those, maybe your case fans. So at the end of the day, as long as your cables are long enough to reach the various components, you can probably go and put this power supply wherever you want this computer case. It's up to you. Now, if you look there in that vicinity there, guys, that is the motherboard. This motherboard's got 2 massive graphics cards there plugged in, so it's kind of obstructing the view of the motherboard. And it's got a cooling system on top of the CPU, which looks like it's a massive air cooling system. You guys will learn more about this later in the course. You'll see the examples later in the course. Let me see if I can give you guys another picture example. I'm going to get this case out of the way. Here's another one for you guys. So this one, same concept, and it's a white case now. It still has hard drive bays on the right. It's got the optical drive bays there on the top. It's got the power supply unit there at the bottom again. But this one, at least we can see the motherboard a little bit more clear now. It's only got 1 graphics card instead of 2 like earlier. And here it doesn't have a massive air cooling system. Instead, it's got a liquid cooling system. So there's no fan there. So you've got the CPU, you've got the heat sink. It's aluminium. It looks like aluminium fins. And aluminium normally absorbs heat very well from the CPU, which gets very hot. And to help it cool down even further, you've got a fan on top of that aluminium heatsink that blows air between the fins, cooling it down even further. Now, what generally works a little bit better than air cooling is liquid cooling. So in this scenario, this is a very old design. They've got a liquid cooling system there on top of the CPU. You can see the pipes going up to the top of the case. We would find the radiator radiator. Now guys, this is not really the topic right now. We'll talk more about this under cooling A+, which is not in this module, it's in a later module. But if you do have a radiator, you ideally always want to put this in the top of the case. It's very important that you preferably try and put the radiator at the top of the case. We'll talk more about that under cooling once we get to the cooling section in this A+ course. But for now, just remember, always put it in the top of the case. Right guys, and before we move on, let me just show you guys one more example for computer case, I mean, why not? So there's a better one, a more modern one. So if you look on the right hand side, you will notice the hard drive bays I showed you guys earlier. Those are missing. You'll notice those optical drive bays. Those are missing. And you'll see at the bottom, that's not the power supply per se, that's more like a hidden chamber you can go and hide the power supply in. But if you look there at the bottom left, you can kind of still see the power supply sticking out there. You have to go and put in the power cord, of course. There they've got a nice cooling system, liquid cooling system. You'll find that most of these new modern liquid cooling systems have actually got some sort of screen on them, and you can go and display all kinds of various things on them. You can display the time, the CPU temperature, the CPU fan. You can even display videos on them for crying out loud. It's flipping insane, guys. You can see the type of cooling system goes up towards the top of the case once again, and that is where the radiator is. These radiators, guys, work with almost the exact same principle as a car's engine. So if you look at a car's engine, it obviously gets hot.
Once
so what
again,
can we use to
have
mitigate against that? That will be your car's cooling system. So you've got water or antifreeze or some sort of coolant pumping through the engine. That liquid absorbs the heat from the engine. It gets pumped to the front of the engine into your what? Your radiator. The radiator's got a bunch of fins. It's got air blowing from the front through these fins, cooling down the water, and then that cooled down water gets pumped back into the engine, and the cycle repeats itself. Now your computer, if you've got a liquid cooling system, guys, works on the same principle. So the CPU is effectively the engine here. It generates a lot of heat. The water absorbs the heat from the CPU, gets pumped to the radiator at the top. It's got a bunch of fins in this radiator. It's got a bunch of fans in this radiator. The fans blow air between these fins, cooling down the liquid, and it gets pumped back to the CPU, and the cycle repeats itself. Of course, we'll talk more about this under cooling, so I'm kind of jumping the gun here. But if you find this interesting, stay tuned for the cooling section A+. Unfortunately, guys, that is not in this module. It's coming up later, but it is in Core 1 because that falls under hardware. Right, so let me get this machine out of the way. Let's talk a bit about the rear panel ports and features, guys. So there's a picture of a totally random machine at the back. If you look at the top left-hand side here, guys, that is where your motherboard is located. And around these ports of the motherboard, we've got what we call a dust cover. And it's got many names. Now, I'm not sure if you guys have ever noticed, but when people put a motherboard into an empty shell, an empty case, somehow, magically, these metal plates at the back always align perfectly with the port of the motherboard. Why is that? It's because that metal plate, guys, actually comes with the motherboard. So if you buy yourself a motherboard and you open the box of the motherboard, one of the items you'll find in that box is that plate at the back. It's got many names, but most commonly this is referred to as a dust panel or a dust cover. So if you've got an empty shell of a case, before you even insert the motherboard or install the motherboard, you're going to take that dust panel, and then from the inside of the case, you're going to press it towards the outside. You're going to hear it in place, and you're going to feel it in place. After you've got that dust panel in place.
Want to know how I protected my team's focus time and got 50% more done? Managing projects shouldn't be hair-pullingly painful. But between endless meetings, constant email updates, and trying to figure out who's doing what, it usually is. And just when you think you've got everything under control, that's when I found Motion. Instead of flipping between poorly adopted project tools and fighting with spreadsheets, Motion brings everything into one view.
Place, then you can go and install the motherboard, and of course the ports are going to align perfectly. Should you want to remove the motherboard one day, you simply just go repeat the process but in reverse. So you remove the motherboard first, and then on that panel from the outside now, you press inwards, and once again you're going to hear it click out of place, and you're going to feel it click out of place, and it's going to fall to the inside of the case, and voila, you can go swap the motherboards. Here at the bottom there you can see there's your expansion cards, if you have any. These days you'll find that nobody's got any expansion cards. The only cards we've got is a graphics card. People these days don't install expansion cards anymore. Most motherboards don't even come out of PCI slots anymore. They only come out of PCIe expansion slot, which is the graphics card expansion slot. Something you'll learn about a little bit more later, which is actually going to be today's module, by the way. Here at the bottom, guys, that is the PSU, your power supply unit. Now in this instance, it's at the bottom. Like I said earlier, this can actually be anywhere in the case. It can either be the top, it could be the bottom, it could be anywhere. As long as the cables are long enough to reach the various components inside of the case. Here, you've got a fan. Now by the looks of it, this looks like a 120 mil fan. Usually this one blows air out at the back of the case. With most computer cases, they will suck air in the front, and they will blow air out at the back. Now some of these fancier, more modern gaming cases, you'll find they're actually open at the top as well of the case, and there you'll normally put your radiator, and the fans will blow upwards, and it's going to blow hot air out at the top as well. So hot air will go out the top, it'll go out the back, and cool air will be sucked in from the front of the case. Alright folks, let's talk about peripheral devices. What the heck is that? Now, for those of you who don't know, peripheral devices are the various random components one would go and plug into your computer. Stuff outside your computer, not stuff inside your computer. So with that being said, peripheral devices, guys, are external components connected to a computer. This can be anything. It can be a flash drive. It can be an external drive. It can be your mouse, your keyboard, your scanner, your printer, your webcam. Pretty much anything on the outside of your case you can go connect to your case. It's probably going to be via USB these days. Anything like that counts as a peripheral device. Now, usually these devices, guys, are non-essential for its core function. Things that are essential will be things like your CPU, your hard drive, your RAM. These are essential components. The stuff you plug in from the outside, most likely to like a USB port, your mouse, your keyboard, that kind of jazz, that is not essential component. Right, folks, and then these peripheral devices, they obviously expand a computer's capabilities. And if you look at something like a printer and a scanner, it gives your computer the ability to go and print stuff now that might be on the machine. The scanner gives your computer the ability to go and scan documents into the machine. If you've got an external drive or a flash drive, it gives your computer additional storage capabilities, which is outside your machine, and it can possibly be transported to another machine. So they expand on your computer's capabilities, and they do other purposes as well. If you're looking for a couple of examples of peripheral devices, because you guys are probably looking for some examples, I did in fact give you guys quite a bunch. But let's start with input device examples. Input, guys, are devices that's going to input information into your laptop or desktop. These would be devices like keyboard, your mouse, your scanner, microphone, webcam, that kind of stuff. Hopefully you guys get the idea. In terms of output devices, which present people with an output, like your printer, a printer prints a document, so it's an output. Speakers, your computer's displays what's going on in your machine. These are all examples of output devices, guys. Right, folks, let's move on swiftly to the next topic. Universal Serial Bus Cables, better known as USB cables for short. Now, guys, with this, you get many USB connector types, many ones. Here's a picture for you guys on the right-hand side of the various kinds you guys need to be familiar with. Now, looking at the picture on the right-hand side, the main ones you need to know are the top right-hand side. These don't really get asked in the exam, but it's still good to know these for, going into the field and all that. So looking at the one at the top left under USB 2. So looking at the one at the top left for USB 2, that is normal Type A. When we say Type A, we basically mean that is a normal USB cable. The only thing that's going to be different is maybe the speed of the cable, but Type A is normally referred to as the normal USB port cable. If you look at Type B, they're under USB 2. That's the speed, by the way. USB 2 is all technology, very slow. I think the maximum speed this one can go up is about 480 megabits per second, if I'm not mistaken. So looking at the second one on the left there on the USB 2, that is most commonly found behind devices like printers, guys. So if you are fortunate enough to have a printer that gets plugged in via cable, specifically USB cable, that's the cable you'd find plugged in behind the printer, and then the other end of that very same cable will look like USB Type A. That's the part you're going to be plugging into your machine. If you look at the third cable there on the USB 2, that cable can be anywhere these days. It's actually a lot less common nowadays. So the place you'll probably find those these days is maybe with like a car's dash cam. I think that's the most common device I've found them on these days. Obviously, it's not limited to those devices. If you have a very old digital camera, very old wireless earphones or headphones, all of those kinds of devices actually use this port. But one of the most common devices I've seen at this exact time, which we find ourselves in right now, that still use that port, is probably a car's dash cam. If you look there way on the right, that is, well, I suppose that's actually a very old cell phone charger. A lot of devices still use that. So if you've got yourself a Bluetooth device, like a Bluetooth boombox or speaker, they tend to want to use these cables to charge themselves, and if you want to just go plug something into this device, maybe to transmit, music or whatever, they use that. We also use these for earphones and headphones, just like the previous one. We used to use these for cell phones to charge them and transmit stuff to our computers, but they are being phased out. So there's a lot of countries of laws now that's being enforced, which basically force all cell phone manufacturers to use the same cable for their devices, which is USB Type-C. That's the one at the bottom right there, guys. USB Type-C is becoming very common. Most phones these days, almost all phones these days, will go and use USB Type-C. Obviously, it's not just limited to phones. You'll find that a lot of these new more modern cases these days on the motherboard, instead of having just your normal USB ports at the back on the motherboard, they'll in fact have USB Type-C ports at the back. And yes, you do get those in different speeds as well. It's not just your normal USB ports that come in different speeds. These Type-C USB ports also come in different speeds. So if you see a black USB Type-A port, it's normally the old USB 2, the slow ones. If you see a blue USB port, it's usually USB 3. I mean, we don't necessarily know which one, but it's usually USB 3. If you see a red one, those are even faster. Sometimes you need to have additional drivers installed for these to work. Looking at the second cable from the right there on USB 3, the most common place you guys will probably see that is on an external drive. Of course, not limited to those devices, but if you have an external drive, the cable that plugs into the external drive, that's what that connector would look like. And the other end of the cable will obviously be normal USB Type A. If you look at the Type B one there on the USB 3, second from the left there, that's one of the least common one you guys are going to see. We do get those, but they're very uncommon. And then, of course, the one there on the left is normal Type A, that's just going to be USB 3 speed. Alright folks, moving you on to the next topic, display types, the different kinds of displays you get. Now this is actually a kind of sort of new topic in this version of A+. I wouldn't say it wasn't in the old one, but this is a new objective that they've added to this module. So in the past, this was not in this module. Now it is. So with regards to display types, first of all guys, you get LCD, probably one of the most common kinds of displays you'll get on most phone screens and laptops, that kind of stuff. So this is probably easily one of the most common types of display you get is LCD, which is short for liquid crystal display. Now the name should kind of tell you what you need to know. It makes use of liquid crystals to modulate light, which creates images. So if any of you guys happen to have science in school and you know how light shines through a prism or a crystal, then you would know, how LCD works. Then you get LED. Now this, guys, is a type of LCD monitor that uses LEDs for backlighting. Instead of crystals and a light shining through crystals, this is LEDs in the background that is basically creating the backlight. Then you also get OLED. Now OLEDs, these bad boys use organic compounds that emit light when electrical current passes through them. Then you get CRT. This is probably one of the oldest ones you'll see on this list. I think it actually is the oldest one on this list. We don't get CRT anymore, by the way. So this one, guys, uses electron beams to illuminate phosphor on the screen, which creates images. I think the last time I saw CRT, if I'm being honest, was around 2009. Now, I stand to be corrected. I don't know if this is the case in all countries, but in my specific country, they got discontinued in the year 2009. And obviously, we still saw them around, for another 2 or 3 years or so, but they gradually started being phased out. So I'm assuming it was kind of sort of more or less the same period for other countries as well. So probably around the period of 2009 is when you would have last really seen them, and then up until about maybe 2011, 2012, and then they would have kind of just disappeared from the market. So very rarely we still see those big CRT screens that looks like a giant big box you've got to go and carry. And thank goodness we don't have those anymore. And then the last one, guys, I've got for you is plasma. Also relatively old, actually. So plasma, this one uses ionized gas. I kid you not. Ionized gas, which they refer to as plasma, to emit light and create the images that you actually see on the screen. Right, and then, still kind of on the topic of display, kind of, being the keywords here. So HDMI and DisplayPort video cables, guys. So these are the only two video cables you get that transmit both video and audio at the same time. So there are going to be other ones which we are still going to discuss in this course, cables like VGA, DVI, very old S-video, all of those ones, they for the most part only transmit video. Now this, guys, is in fact a question exam. I can guarantee you, you will get questions about this in exam. Now normally how they'll refer to this, it's probably going to be a multi-puzzle question, that's normally how they refer to this, is they'll say which of the following cables is able to transmit both video and audio, or is able to carry both video and audio at the same time. And in the exam, they're going to list 4 possible answers, of which you can only choose one, and the one you're going to be looking for is either HDMI or DisplayPort. Now since they're both correct, they're not going to list both of them in the exam, they'll list either the one or the other. So just go and check which one you see. If you see HDMI, that's the one you choose. If you see DisplayPort, that's the one you choose. So just go and check which one of these two answers you see there, that's going to be your answer, folks. Now in terms of HDMI, which is high definition multimedia interface, there's a picture of what it looks like. So the one on the left is the standard HDMI cable. You guys probably would have seen this behind your TV screen, possibly behind your computer monitor if you've got a fancy computer monitor, maybe on your gaming graphics card if you've got a gaming graphics card. Some of the newer laptops have got this port. So that is able to obviously carry both sound and video at the same time. Now, unfortunately, HDMI's got royalties and things associated to that. So, yeah, royalties is always a bit of a bugger up. So, unfortunately, if people want to go and use this technology, they've got to go and pay royalties. So, yeah, a lot of manufacturers were like, we don't want to go and pay for royalties. So, somebody somewhere along the line said, hey, boys, what about if we come up with our own? And that's where DisplayPort joined the party. There's a picture of you guys way on the right of what DisplayPort looks like. So, at first glance, it might look the same, but if you look very closely, you'll see the fitting, the little hole that it plugs into, is ever so slightly different. It is unique to that cable. Now, this one doesn't have any royalties, associated to it. I suppose you can call this open source if you want to. It's available for free to the general public. No royalties have to be paid. And it's able to achieve the exact same as HDMI. Now, both HDMI and DisplayPort, what I'm about to mention is not part of the course, and it will not be an exam, with both
Upskill your own way with custom learning paths. Tailored by an in-house expert, get unique recommendations on courses, hands-on experiences, and skill and certification assessments. Build team-specific paths to streamline learning and meet them where they are to reach your business goals quickly and with purpose. Learn more at pluralsight.com.
Both of them you do get different qualities, guys. Different speeds and different qualities. It's not a matter of all HDMI cables are the same, and it's not a matter of all DisplayPort cables are the same. Some of them are different speeds, different qualities, and all that. So in some cases, you'll find your graphics card on your PC might support both HDMI and DisplayPort. And if your screen also supports both HDMI and DisplayPort, you might want to go and check on your graphics card which one is the better quality one on your specific graphics card, and then you just go get your a cable for that specific port, and you're gonna get better, quality video on your screen and all that. It's not a must, but if you're a serious gamer and stuff, you probably want to go and do that kind of stuff. And before we move on to the next topic, guys, just once again here on the HDMI, if you look at the one there on the right, that's the micro one or the mini one. Unfortunately, it's not really up to scale in this picture, so it's much smaller than that one. Some of the newer gamer motherboards might have that, or some of the newer gamer graphics cards, but generally it's not that common. It's more common to see the one on the left, which is the standard HDMI size port. Alright, and then moving on to a different kind of cable, Thunderbolt and Lightning cables. So starting off with Thunderbolt, guys. Now this one is, well, kind of looks like USB-C. Thunderbolt can be used as a display interface like DisplayPort, which we just discussed, or HDMI actually, and as a general peripheral interface like USB. So you can use this as DisplayPort or HDMI, or you can go use this as a general peripheral interface like USB. And who would have thought, right? But for those of you who don't know, Thunderbolt versions 1 and 2, they use the same physical interfaces as a mini DisplayPort and are compatible with DisplayPort, so that a monitor with a DisplayPort can be connected to a computer via a Thunderbolt port and a suitable adapter cable. Now, something you might also not know is Thunderbolt ports are distinguished from mini DisplayPort by a lightning bolt or a flash icon, like the one you guys see there on the cable. Version 2 of the standard supports links of up to 20 gigabits per second. Now, folks, like DisplayPort, multiple monitors can be connected to a single port by doing something called daisy chaining. So in other words, you're actually able to go and use one port on your computer, but you'll be able to go and link, 2 screens, 3 screens, all to one port. Very convenient if you are someone with lots of screens, but you find yourself in a pickle where you might only have one port. It happens the best. Guys, Thunderbolt version 3, this one changes the physical interface to use the same port connector and cabling as USB-C. Now, converter cables are available to connect Thunderbolt 1 or 2 devices to Thunderbolt 3 ports. So there's always going to be some sort of adapter or connector you guys can go make use of. A USB device plugged into a Thunderbolt 3 port will function normally, but Thunderbolt devices will not work if connected to a USB port, but it's not Thunderbolt enabled. So if you want to go and connect a Thunderbolt device to a USB port, and that port is not Thunderbolt enabled, yeah, no luck, it's not going to work. Lastly, folks, Thunderbolt 3 supports up to 40 gigabits per second over a short, high-quality cable, which is only up to about half a meter, so that's approximately, 1.6 feet if we use the non-metric system. I'm more familiar with the metric system, which is about half a meter, 0.5 meters. But if you're using the non-metric system, that's equivalent to about 1.6 feet if you're going to use a converter. And then the other cable, folks, Lightning cable. Now, if you are a Windows user, such as myself, and you probably have never seen this cable, you probably don't know what this cable is. This cable is only proprietary to, Apple and iPhone, that kind of stuff. I can't even say that word, without butchering it. So Apple's iPhone and Apple's iPad mobile devices use this Lightning cable or Lightning port connector, and the Lightning cable is, of course, reversible. Now, the Lightning port is found only on Apple's mobile devices, guys, just in case you didn't know, so watch out. Might be a question exam. Now, to connect such a device to a PC, you need a suitable adapter cable, such as Lightning to USB-A or Lightning to USB-C. If you don't have one of those, it ain't gonna work. Okay, folks, I'm going to move you on to the last topic for this specific section. That would be SATA hard drive cables. For those of you that don't know, SATA or SATA is something pronounced. It is Serial Advanced Technology Attachment, which stands for. I doubt they will ask you that in an exam. I haven't seen them ask that in an exam, but there you go, just in case. So when it comes to these hard drives, folks, they connect with 2 cables. One would be your data cable, the other would be the power cable. Now, in terms of the data cable, there's a picture of you guys there on the right-hand side of what that would more or less look like. But guys, that one is a bit red in color, but the color in reality does not matter. The most common colors you'll find for these cables are normally red and yellow, sometimes pink. But you can actually find them in pretty much any color rainbow. I mean, I've got black ones, I've seen blue ones, I've seen green ones. They can actually be any color of the rainbow. Most commonly, however, they will be red or yellow. But the color does not matter of these cables. Now, the good news about these cables is, when it comes to the hard drive, or even optical drive, because we used to use these on the old optical drives, not something you guys need to worry about since nobody has optical drives anymore, but on a hard drive, it can only go in on one port, and it can only go in one way. On your motherboard, should your motherboard have SATA ports, which they normally do, they only have at least 4 of these ports, should it have one, they can only go in that one port and that one port alone. So it's not something you guys have to worry about. It can only fit in one way. If you look very closely in that fitting there, you'll see it looks almost like a little L shape, and the hole or the socket that it needs to go into on the motherboard and the device looks exactly the same. It's got like a little L shape, thing sticking out of it. So this red cable, guys, is the data cable, the one that transmits the data between the hard drive and your motherboard and everything else. Then you get the power connector. So there's a picture of you guys of what the power connector looks like. That part of the cable, guys, goes and connects to your hard drive. So there's only 2 cables plugged into the hard drive. One is the data one, that one is red at the top. The other one is the power cable to provide power to this device. The power cable, the other end of the cable, that is going to be coming from your power supply unit, PSU for short. So from the power supply, the power cable plugs into the hard drive, and the second cable plugs into the hard drive, which is the data cable, and the other end of the cable plugs into the motherboard. Pretty straightforward. And a little extra, I don't really know why this is in the course, but I'm adding it to you guys as an extra because it's part of the course, Molex connector. So there's a picture of you guys on the left-hand side of what a Molex connector looks like. That is a power connector as well. It also comes from the power supply, obvious, but this is for all the devices in your computer. So if you have a very old hard drive, a PATA, not a SATA, a PATA hard drive, which we also refer to as an IDE hard drive, if you have one of those, that would have been the power cable. We don't really see those anymore. They're basically legacy, kind of extinct at this point in time. The very old optical drives also used to use those, and in some cases, well, literally in some cases, you would actually find the case fans also using that. It's not recommended to go and connect the case fan to one of those because the fan will always be running at a fixed speed and it'll always be running at maximum speed, which is not always what we want. Sometimes the machine might just be idling and now the fans are running at maximum speed the whole time, which is not ideal. You'll find that a lot of fans these days, the new more modern fans, they've got additional cables you can go and plug into the motherboard, and that allows your motherboard to go and control the speed of the fans. So the more heavy lifting your computer does, the harder it works. Well, obviously then the harder it's going to get, and then the faster the fans will start spinning automatically. So that's your computer doing that. But if you're gonna just plug it into one of those Molex connectors, I mean, it's not the worst thing that could happen, but your fans always be running at maximum speed, and let's face it, some of these fans are quite noisy. Alright folks, so that finally brings us to the end of the first section in this module, moving you guys into the second main section of this module, which is motherboards. Now the first topic up in this module, guys, is electrical safety. Often you'll find that these screwdrivers have got magnetic tips, and these screwdrivers are not anti-static. So you actually stand a very good chance of blowing your motherboard by using a normal standard screwdriver, and yeah, we just don't recommend that. What you'll also notice is when you buy electrical components for a computer, the motherboard, the hard drive, the graphics card, all of these boards and stuff, you'll find they come in a special bag. At first glance, it might look like a normal bag to you guys, but it's not. That, folks, is an anti-static bag. So if this item that you're buying is in a static environment, it's not gonna do anything because that's an anti-static bag. You'll feel it's actually a very thick bag. It feels like a hard, kind of weird plastic. To some degree, some of them are actually all transparent, but it's an anti-static bag. So if you have one of these bags, and let's say you just bought an item, I would not throw these bags away. You're always gonna need them again later. So if you've got an old second-hand item you just took out of a computer case, it's always a good idea to not just put it randomly somewhere. Put it in one of these old bags of yours. At least you can prevent this item from blowing, because of some static, in that environment. Now, what they will especially test you on in the exam is if you know you can go and use what we call an anti-static wrist strap or a rubber mat. And the course itself, we for the most part just mentioned the wrist strap, but strangely enough in the exam, there's some test you on stuff which is not mentioned. For something perhaps you walk back, you'll have to do this again. In the beginning, I'm not gonna lie to you, cable in there. Now, as for the graphics card, there is the slot. A lot of motherboards these days you'll find might have more than one graphics card slot. They might have two. On an old motherboard that I've got. So the exam, very normally test if you know what you guys of what that might look like. So you can go and put this little thing around your wrist or your ankle. We call it a wrist strap, but the fact of the matter is it doesn't really matter when your body you put it. You can put it around your ankle, you can put it around your wrist, and then you've got a little alligator clip there. You're supposed to go clip it onto something that's grounded, preferably something metal. So if you're working on a computer case, ideally you're gonna go clip it onto the frame of the computer case, not the outside, preferably guys, the inside of the frame. The outside might feel like metal, it might sound like metal, but in some cases the outside is not really conductive, it's a weird kind of metal. So the inside of the frame is normally conductive metal. So always clip this on the inside of the frame, never the outside of the frame. That's not something that will test you on the exam, that's just me giving you guys extra tips. Life lessons, so you guys don't go blow something. So always clip it onto something metal, preferably the inside of the frame. If you're gonna go clip this onto a table, which you can by the way, it doesn't really help to go clip this onto a wooden table. It has to be a metal table which is on the ground. So this table obviously has to be making contact with the ground, otherwise it's not really gonna work because you're not grounded, guys. Right, and then before I continue to the next topic, guys, what you can also go and use is a rubber mat. Now the proper way to go and do this, not that anyone actually does this, is underneath your feet there's supposed to be a special rubber mat. And then on the desk where you're gonna be working on these computers, on the desk is supposed to be a rubber mat as well. And you put the PC on the rubber mat while you're standing on the second rubber mat. Now according to CompTIA, that's what you're supposed to go and do. You're supposed to stand on a rubber mat, you're supposed to put the PC on the rubber mat, and you're supposed to go and ground yourself using what we call an anti-static wrist strap. In real life, guys, most people don't do that. I can tell you now, more than 90% of people don't do that. So there's a difference between what you learn in books and in courses versus what you're actually going to be doing in reality. Unfortunately, this is part of the course, and unfortunately, I can guarantee you it will ask you this in exam, even though nobody actually does this. So please remember this for your exam. Once you guys pass the exam, then it's not as crucial to remember this. In real life, what most of us will go and do is, if you're busy building a PC, instead of having a rubber mat or an anti-static wrist strap, you'll just go and touch the frame. So you can literally just use your hand, touch the inside of the computer frame, and you can go and work with the components inside. You would have just safely discharged yourself into the frame of the computer case. But if you were to walk away a few steps to go pick up a screwdriver or something, perhaps you walk back, you'll have to do this again. In the beginning, I'm not gonna lie to you, it's gonna require a lot of concentration to remember to do this, but eventually you're gonna get used to this so quickly, it's gonna become muscle memory. You're gonna do it without even noticing it, guys. This is like putting on your safety belt in the car. In the beginning, your parents might tell you, put on your safety belt, and it's gonna require concentration from your side to remember to do this. They might have to remind you a couple of times. But now you're probably at a point in time in your life where you might do this instinctively without even thinking about it. If I ask you afterwards, did you wear your safety belt? You might be like, I think so. Meanwhile, you did. You did it instinctively without even thinking about it. That's called muscle memory. So you're gonna get to a point very quickly, you wouldn't believe how quickly this happens, where you're gonna go and do this automatically because of muscle memory. Right, folks, let's move on to motherboard connector types. Alright, so folks, the base set of connectors for CPU, memory, disk drive, and peripherals, where is that? There's a picture of you guys on the right hand side, it's not the best picture, so what I'll do is, I'll show you guys practically on the video in a few moments what this will actually look like on an old motherboard I've got lying around. It's strangely enough a working PC that I'm gonna be showing you guys as well, but it's a very old PC, but the concept still applies. At the end of the day, 1 plus 1 is always gonna be 2. So using this picture for the moment, you can see there is the CPU socket. So we call that the CPU because it used to be in a central. So central processing unit, because from top to bottom, as well as left to right, it used to be in a center. It wasn't always a chip, it actually used to be a slot for a card in the middle. That used to be your CPU. Back then CPUs were not as fast as they are nowadays. And then eventually, as time went by, these things got faster and faster, so there was obviously a need to go and change the technology. A card for a CPU was no longer suitable, so you have to go and change this to a CPU socket on the motherboard. So that's how we ended up with that socket now there at the top. So from left to right, it's still more or less in the middle. From top to bottom, not so much. If you look there way on the right hand side, these are your memory slots, guys. Also known as your system memory, also known as your RAM or random access memory. Now this picture we've got in front of us, there we've got 4 RAM slots. Some motherboards might only have 2 RAM slots, so on average you'll see between 2 or 4 RAM slots. If you look at something like a server motherboard, they could have up to 16 or even more RAM slots. Not something you guys need to worry about at A+ level. A+ for the most part only covers laptops and desktops. What you guys will also notice, I can might as well mention this now, but we are going to cover this later. If you look at this RAM slots, and that's not the clearest picture, you'll notice that out of those 4 RAM slots, there's 2 different colors. The one closest to the CPU is a dark color, and it's like a dark gray. The second closest one to the CPU is like a light gray, and then the third one is the same as the first one, it's like a dark gray, and then the fourth one is the same as the second one. This is because of channels, guys. Ideally, you want to put RAM on the same channel. So as an example, if I put a RAM chip in that first slot, the dark gray one on the left, if I'm lucky enough to have a second RAM chip, I'm not going to put it in the second slot. I'm in fact going to put it in the third slot because that's the same channel. You're going to fill up a channel first. It works better that way because of the bandwidth and all that. In the past, it was sometimes better to start the slot closer to the CPU because of the distance. To us, it doesn't really look like a big difference there, but for computers, that's light years apart. Nowadays, you'll find a lot of the new modern gaming motherboards and stuff. Instead of starting with slot 1 and then slot 3, they'll start with slot 2 and slot 4. So if you're lucky enough to have 2 RAM chips, you'll put your first RAM chip into slot 2, that'll be the light gray one closer to the CPU, and your second RAM chip into slot 4. Now, normally your motherboard will indicate which one you have to go and use. Never mind having to go look at the manual. Right next to those RAM slots on the motherboard, I know you guys can't see this picture, but literally on the motherboard, these slots will be very clearly labeled, and it'll tell you, fill slot 2 and slot 4 first. It actually says so physically on the motherboard, a little picture there. So even if you've never done this before in your life, if you look at the motherboard right before you're about to put the RAM chips in, you'll see, oh, hang on guys, here it shows me I need to use slot 2 and slot 4 first. It actually shows you on the motherboard, I kid you not. Something they did not do in the past on the very old motherboards. If you look there on the left-hand side, guys, we call that your I/O, so that's your input and output, port. So input will be things like a mouse, a keyboard, output will obviously be something like a screen, a printer, that kind of stuff. So that's all your input and output ports. If you look way on the right there, that is your SATA ports. Those ones are facing sideways. Now some of the older motherboards, the old low-quality motherboards, the ports will be facing upwards towards us when you're facing the motherboard. Now, because of the graphics card slot being often aligned to the SATA ports, somebody said, you know what if we have these SATA ports facing sideways? Otherwise, we're not going to be able to get a cable in there. But as for the graphics card, there is the slot. A lot of motherboards these days you find might have more than one graphics card slot. They might have two, they might have three, but at the very least, they only have one slot. We call that your PCIe slot. So that one is right there. That's going to be the top slot there, guys. And if you check there, you'll see it's aligned with the SATA ports. So if I happen to have a graphics card which often extends well beyond the edge of this motherboard, and I happen to have SATA cables on a plug-in for SATA hard drives, that's going to be an issue if those SATA ports were facing upwards, because the graphics card would have been in the way. You're going to have to sacrifice the SATA device or the graphics card. So some designers said, you know what, no, the heck of that, boys. What if we have these SATA ports facing sideways instead of upwards? Then we can kind of wiggle in the SATA cables underneath there and still have the graphics card. We don't have to sacrifice either or of these two. If you look below the graphics card slot there, guys, you'll see there's a couple other slots there as well. As I said, some of them might be additional graphics card slots. I can see clearly in this picture. Some of them might just be what we call normal PCI slots times 4. That's basically the speed of the slot. So these normal PCI slots, which are very uncommon nowadays, are for other expansion things. Things like a sound card, a TV card, an old modem. Nobody uses any of those old expansion cards. So nowadays, the only card somebody would put in there is always going to be a graphics card for the most part, folks. So what I'm going to do for you guys in this module, just a little bit later in the video, is I'm going to show you guys a video within this video of where I've got an ATX motherboard, a normal standard ATX form factor motherboard. Not an old one, but just where I show you guys physically on a real motherboard where you find each of these components. So I'm going to first for now continue with these little animations, and then once we've covered all the topics, we'll show you guys practically on the real motherboard where you would find these things and what it actually looks like on a real motherboard. So before we get to that, let's first move on to the next topic, CPU socket and motherboard heatsinks. So first of all, guys, with regard to the socket type for the CPU, this depends on the manufacturer. So normally when most of us want to build a PC, the first thing you need to decide is what brand of CPU do you want. Do you want Intel or do you want AMD? These two are the two alpha dogs when it comes to CPUs. You have to go decide which one you want, which one you're a fan of, or what your unique needs are. So if you want to do workloads, you might choose the one. If you want to play gaming, you might choose the other one. And even if you go and decide, hey, I would like to get myself an Intel, or hey, I would like to get myself an AMD, it's not a matter of let me just go get myself a CPU. That's normally what we start with. You decide on the brand of the CPU, and you decide on the make and the model of the CPU based on your spec requirements and based on your budget. Once you decide on the CPU, then you check what motherboard supports that CPU of yours. So if I'm looking at an Intel CPU, and the CPU is an 1155, that means it's got 1155 contact points, pins. So on the motherboard, if you go check, the motherboard will have 1,155 little pins, very small little pins, that's going to make contact with that CPU. Underneath the CPU, that Intel CPU, if you were to lift it up, you'll see little contact points, 1,155. So whatever socket of CPU you get, you need to make sure you get the same socket motherboard, guys. Otherwise, you're going to have a mismatch, it's not going to fit, it's not going to make proper contact. AMD works slightly different. So AMD, if you've got yourself an AMD Ryzen CPU, normally most of them are going to be Ryzen, you need to make sure you've got the right motherboard. So it's probably going to be something along the lines of an AM4 motherboard or an AM5 motherboard. AM4 is the older generation, guys. So if you have a gaming PC, which is probably going to be why you've got an AMD PC, you'll most likely have an AM4 motherboard if you built your PC, let's say, 3 or 5 years ago. Then you probably have an AM4 motherboard with one of the older generation CPUs. If you built your PC recently, especially if it's a high-spec machine, you more than likely have an AM5 motherboard with a newer generation of CPU chips. So it's all about how new your motherboard is. The newer motherboards, which are AM5 on the AMD side, they support the newer CPUs. Unfortunately, if you've got an older motherboard, which is 3 or 5 years old or older, it will not necessarily support the newer CPUs. You'll tend to want to have to go and change the motherboard to support that new CPU. And if you change the motherboard, you'll more than likely have to change the RAM as well. Most of the old AM4 motherboards support DDR4 RAM, if you know what that is. So RAM-wise, it supports DDR4 most of them. And then the newer AM5 motherboards, they for the most part support DDR5 RAM. So you're probably going to end up changing your RAM as well, if you guys know what that is. More on that later. And as for the CPU socket, as you guys can see down the picture, it's the same picture we had earlier, just a little bit more zoomed in. It's that square little socket. So whether it's be Intel, whether it be AMD, potato, it's always going to be in the same location. It's usually a square little socket near the memory banks. When they say memory banks, they mean those RAM slots you see there on the right-hand side. And when you do eventually decide to go and put a CPU in, whether it be Intel or AMD, you're going to have to cool that sucker down, guys. If it's a low-level or low-spec machine, it's probably going to be an air cooler. So on top of that CPU, you're going to put a heat sink. It's going to be a piece of metal, which is generally made out of aluminium, because aluminium absorbs heat very well. It's going to be in the shape and form of fins, and the reason for that is because you're going to have a fan connected to that heat sink that blows air through the heat sink, cooling it down even further. So aluminium is a very good conductor of heat. It stays cool very well, but to aid with that even further, you've got a fan blowing between the heat sink fins to cool it down even further. Now, if you have a lot of money, and if you've got a high-spec gaming machine, you tend to want to have got yourself a liquid cooling system, kind of like what we saw at the beginning of this video. Instead of having an aluminium heatsink on top of the CPU with a fan, you'll have some sort of water block on top of that CPU, and that's going to absorb the heat. It's going to pump that to a radiator elsewhere, and through that radiator you can have a bunch of fans blowing through a bunch of fans. Kind of the same concept, except it's going to be water. So at the end of the day, as long as you cool down the CPU, that is the most important thing here, folks. If you're wondering what this heatsink and fan looks like, don't stress. That is going to be in the videos later on as well, so just stay tuned for that. For now, let's first get you guys to the memory side of things. So in terms of memory slots, guys, that is your random access memory, or should I say system memory. We usually refer to this as random access memory, RAM for short. Now, folks, this is the principal storage space for computer data and program instructions. It's an example of volatile memory. If you don't know what that means, volatile memory loses data when power is lost. If you still don't know what I mean by that, so let's cover volatile memory here. Anything you've got open on your machine, guys, like you tend to want to have a web browser open on your device right now, whether it be your phone or your laptop or your desktop, you've got a web browser open most likely, and on that web browser, you're probably watching YouTube. Now that browser, guys, is loaded into your RAM. Anything you've got open on your device, let's say your laptop or desktop, whether it be a program, a game, a document, or a file, anything you've got open, it's loaded into your RAM temporarily. Think of that as your working space. RAM is one of the fastest types of memory you get in your computer. Your hard
Play in the next tab for free now.
Hard drive, or at least the old hard drive were not that fast. Usually the older hard drive was the slowest component in any computer. The hard drive, guys, is your long-term permanent storage. So anything you've installed, all your documents and files are stored there. And when you turn your PC off, it's not lost. The next time you turn your machine back on, you'll have to go double-click on a file or document, or double-click on the icon of that program or game. That's going to load it from your slow long-term memory, being the hard drive, into your faster memory, being your RAM. So the RAM is much faster than your hard drive, but it's unfortunately volatile. So it's much, much faster, but it's temporary. So if you were to turn your PC off, anything that wasn't a RAM is now lost. Now if I have to give you that example, imagine you've got a bunch of stuff open on your PC, documents and files and programs and stuff. And if you have a desktop PC, you yank out the power cord. Would you agree with me that everything you had open will be closed now? It's closed because it was in your RAM and it's now lost. If you start that PC back up again by plugging the power cable in and you hit the power button, the files are not gone. They're not missing. They're just not open anymore. But if you go and double click on the documents again, or you open the program again, it's going to load it from the hard drive back into the RAM again. So the files are not lost per se. They're just closed. They were temporarily in your RAM while you've got them open and while you're using them. But as soon as power is lost, anything in the RAM that was open is lost. So if they ask you an exam, give an example of volatile memory, because that's a question you might get in the exam. The example would be RAM. RAM, folks, is an example of volatile memory. If you look at something like a computer's hard drive, that's an example of non-volatile memory, because if power is lost, whatever's on the hard drive is not lost. That is long-term cold storage, guys. It's slow. Well, at least if we look at the old hard drives and the old solid drives, they're generally slow. So look at the new .in2 slots that they put on motherboards. For those of you know what that is, that's not so slow. Those are actually quite fast these days. Now these RAM chips, folks, they're normally packaged as DIMMs, double-sided memory. So you're usually going to have to try and use to the best of your ability 2 RAM chips. You'll find on both sides of the RAM chip is got memory, and if you can, do your best to try and get 2 RAM chips, not just 1. 1 is not too good. If you've got more than 2, that's also not good. So just because you've got 4 RAM chip slots, guys, does not mean you should try and fill all 4 slots. The sweet spot is normally 2 RAM chips. 1, yeah, it'll give you a lot of RAM, it'll give you decent speed, but you're not going to have the optimal bandwidth. 2 RAM chips is better. So instead of having just 1 RAM chip of 8 gigs, you'll be better off having 2 RAM chips of 4 gig each, respectively, because of the bandwidth. Now, yes, you can go down a third or a fourth, but then you're going to go and, cause instability in your system. It's going to get slow again. So the sweet spot is, in the end of the day, going to always be 2 RAM chips on most machines. Very rarely will you get, proper stability out of 4 RAM chips. So if you just need a lot of RAM, I suppose you can go and do that. But if you are a serious gamer or somebody needs serious speed and stuff like that, then you're going to want to try and keep the 2 RAM chips, guys. You'll see any proper gamer with installed will always have only 2 RAM chips in, not more than 2. More than 2 causes instability in the system. Right, now I'm going to move on to the bottom left of the motherboard, guys. On the bottom left of most motherboards, you will find the CMOS and RTC batteries. Now, to help aid with this, if you guys don't know what the CMOS battery is, that battery, guys, powers the chipset that keeps track of the date and time for the system. It's also referred to as, I say, the RTC battery or clock battery. There's a picture for you guys. In this picture, you can see it looks like a coin cell battery. You'll actually find that exact same size battery in your car's remote, depending on the car you drive. And in this picture, to the bottom left of the motherboard, that's actually a very common place to find it, somewhere in the vicinity of the bottom left of the motherboard. But they can also potentially be located at the bottom right of the motherboard, depending on the brand and the model of your motherboard. These batteries, folks, on average, last approximately about 5 to 10 years. So if you buy some motherboard, chances are probably going to last you 10 years, if not longer. The motherboard will break or fail long before the battery fails, but there are a couple of duds out there. I have come across quite a few clients where the battery would fail literally within a year or 2 after this motherboard was bought, and I suppose it could be a matter of maybe it was old stock in a factory, maybe it's a dud, maybe something else happened, but on average, the batteries will long exceed the lifespan of the motherboard. Now, due to that, you'll probably end up having a lot of old failed motherboards or broken motherboards lying in a box somewhere, all of which when the batteries are still perfectly fine. And eventually one day, if you happen to come across a client or a user where the battery seems to be a problem, instead of having to go and buy a new battery, they're not expensive, they're actually very inexpensive, but instead of having to go through the inconvenience of having to go and buy a battery, you could just go to that box of yours and just got all your old motherboards and just go and snap one of those old batteries and swap them. And you're gonna find it work just fine. So what does it do? It helps keep track of the system date and time. If you've ever plugged out a desktop PC, and let's say you kept it plugged out for a while, a couple of days or weeks, and you plug it back in, you probably would have noticed by now that the date and the time is always correct for some strange reason. How is it that your machine always remembers the date and the time, even though it was plugged out? That, guys, is because of this coin cell CMOS battery. It helps the BIOS remember various things like the system date and time. It helps it remember all kinds of other things like your BIOS password if you have one, your system boot order, so if you want to boot from your hard drive first instead of a CD-ROM, or instead of a flash drive, or instead of the network, it's going to help the system remember those things. Any BIOS related settings, whether it be overclocking, whatever, the CMOS battery helps the computer remember that. So if you've got some sort of configuration settings or whatever in your BIOS and you're not sure how to reset them, including the password I might add, removing the coin cell battery will force the BIOS to forget that. So normally I would recommend you remove it for about 5 minutes. It doesn't always forget immediately. So if you have a BIOS password and you want to bypass that, maybe it's for legitimate reasons, one way would be to go remove the battery, wait about 5 to 10 minutes, put it back in, and the next time you start a PC, you're going to see it's not going to know what the date is, it's going to have no clue what the time is, it's not going to have a clue what the boot order is, you will have to go and reconfigure all of this stuff from scratch again. But it's quite a nice, easy way to go and reset everything back to default if you make a boo-boo along the line. Alright folks, and then in terms of expansion slots, what is that? I did very briefly show you guys earlier in one of those animation pictures. I showed you guys the PCIe and the PCI slot. So I will show you guys this again later in that other video I was talking about, so just stay tuned for that. But for the time being, until we get there, an expansion slot, guys, this is connection slots on the motherboard in which adapter cards, like your graphics card, can be installed to extend the range of functions the computer can perform. Now most of us, including myself, probably only use this to go and add something like a graphics card. Let's face it, that's the only thing that most of us are going to be using these expansion cards for, is to go and add a fancy graphics card because maybe you want to go play games, or maybe you need this graphics card to go and do something like rendering. I actually use a fancy graphics card to do the rendering for these videos. It's in your interest to have a graphics card. If you don't have a proper graphics card, rendering these videos that we make on YouTube is actually a bit of a mission. I'm not saying it's impossible, but trust me, it's a mission. Especially if you have a video that's as long as these ones. Normal onboard graphics cards really are not good at rendering long form videos like this. You need a proper graphics card, otherwise the system is going to crash. Other expansion cards could be, of course, a TV card, a Wi-Fi card, a modem. Not really going to be using any of those. I think realistically, the only one that you guys might use is a wireless card. You give your desktop PC wireless capability like a laptop. Now the new, latest motherboards for gaming PCs and stuff, they actually come with built-in Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, believe it or not. But if you have a relatively old motherboard, or one that's not such a high-spec motherboard, then maybe you want Wi-Fi. If you want Wi-Fi, you just go and add a cheap expansion card into one of those PCI slots, and voila. I'll elaborate on that a little bit later once I show you guys the video. I'll show you guys where these PCI slots and graphics card slots are. Now these slots, folks, they've got a multi-bus design which allows different expansion slots on a motherboard. And they do generally have support for all the technologies as well. You'll find a lot of them actually backwards compatible. Now for the time being, before we move on to the bottom right of the motherboard, and before I show you guys the video, here's just a picture here at the bottom left of the motherboard. There is a better picture of the PCIe slot. So if you look at the top one there, guys, it says times 16. That is your PCIe slot, which we use for the graphics cards. Even though it says PCIe, you get different speeds, you get different versions. You get PCIe 3, PCIe 4, PCIe 5. I think 5 is currently the latest version. So depending on the version you've got, that'll dictate which graphics cards and stuff you can go and run. Normally the newer ports are backwards compatible. So if you've got an old port, it's not forward compatible, but the newer ports are backwards compatible. So the new stuff is always backwards compatible. You'll find this one looks like it's got a second graphics card slot as well, which is an older, slower one. So usually most of these other slots will normally be white in color. That's not set in stone anyway, guys. They can actually be any color in the rainbow. But these other slots will usually be white on most motherboards, and we just refer to them as normal PCI slots. You'll normally see them with like a little X times 4 there, which just indicate the speed. And you can see obviously there are those small ones, the times 1. Those are the small little expansion cards. Now guys, this whole motherboard concept that I'm explaining to you guys and show you guys, this is in fact questions in exam. It's not just a question exam, it's a PBQ in exam. If you know what PBQ is, that is short for performance-based question. It's a simulation. Now if you guys don't know, most of your questions in A+ exam will be theory-based and multiple choice-based. They will ask you a question, and you'll have a choice between 4 possible answers, of which you can usually just choose one. After you've chosen your answer of choice, you'll just move on to the next question. Now you get a couple of other different kinds of questions, one of which is a PBQ. They'll give you something practical to do. Now this is a drag and drop PBQ. So in the exam, should you be one of the unfortunate souls that gets this specific simulation, this is not guaranteed, they'll give you a picture of a motherboard, kind of like a cartoon motherboard like the one I've been giving you guys. And on the left-hand side, you'll see a list of components. CPU, RAM, graphics card, that kind of stuff. On the right-hand side, on the motherboard, they'll have empty slots or empty name slots for each component. And your job is going to be to go and drag the correct name to the correct component. So on the left-hand side, you might see the name CPU. Your job would then be to go and drag the name CPU to the correct place on the motherboard. And again, you know where the CPU is. So it's very important you know where what on the motherboard goes, not just from an exam perspective because they're going to ask you about an exam, but also because of the field, guys. You're probably going to have to go and know how to go and troubleshoot machines and how to go and build machines. So never mind the exam, this is something you guys do need to know, in fact, guys. So please ensure you know where what on the motherboard goes. If you don't feel comfortable with this, I would definitely encourage you guys to go and rewatch this video. Maybe not the whole video, but at least the motherboard section of the video. The part where I explain where what goes on the motherboard. Please make sure you know that for the exam. These PBQs do count for an insane amount of marks in the exam, guys. Should you get the PBQ wrong, there's a very real chance you can fail the exam. Alright, so moving you guys on to the bottom right of the motherboard. Storage bus. Or should I say SATA and IDE. Now IDE, guys, is also known as PATA. P-A-T-A. That is the old concept hard drives and optical drives and stuff. If you look there at the top there of this picture, notice at the bottom right of the motherboard, if you look there at the top, there is an example of an old IDE port. That actually looks like it's going to be for a floppy disk drive because of how small it is. And if I look just to the left there, it looks like it's for either a hard drive or something else. I can't really see in this picture. But it's more like what you expect an IDE port to look like. They have a large pin, it's going to be a very wide port like that. That's for the old hard drives and optical drives which we don't get anymore. Those are legacy. They're basically extinct. Just below it, you can see there's the SATA ports. These are facing sideways because it's in line with the graphics card. And if this person happens to slot in a huge graphics card, that graphics card is going to hover over those SATA ports, which means you're not going to be able to use them. If you're going to try and get a cable into them, it's not going to work if you have to put the cable in from the top. Instead, some clever oak said, you know what? What if we go and slide these cables in from the side? And they did just that. So the motherboard I'm going to show you guys later practically, that one, the SATA ports are facing upwards instead of sideways. But in that video, you will see the SATA ports are not completely in line with the graphics card, so it's not the worst thing. One of them is kind of in line, so it's a bit of an issue. But there's quite a lot of them still open, so it's not the worst of things. Right, folks, and then here we've got other motherboard connectors. You remember earlier I told you guys when I showed you guys the front panel connector.
To get started in data analytics, you don't need previous experience or a degree. The Google Data Analytics Certificate.
There's the USB, the mic in, the audio out, that kind of stuff. I told you guys, those cables inside a case are dangling loose. When you buy yourself a new empty shell, a new empty case, it's got a bunch of cables dangling loose, which is for your USB in the front, your audio, your mic, and stuff like that. So the audio cable usually 9 out of 10 times has audio written on it very clearly. And on the motherboard, somewhere at the bottom right or the bottom left, it's got an audio port. Most motherboards, you'll notice, actually has 2 audio ports. So there'll be somewhere at the bottom right or somewhere at the bottom left, it can actually be right or left. And on the port, it clearly says audio. Audio 1 and audio 2. The same can be said about USB. On the cable from the case, 9 out of 10 times, very clearly on the cable, it'll say USB. And on the motherboard, there's only 2 USB ports. USB 1 and USB 2. So for both the audio and USB, it does not matter which one you connect to. As long as you connect audio to any one of the 2 audio ports, it will work. As long as you connect the USB to any one of the 2 USB ports, which are clearly labeled on the motherboard, it will work. At first glance, what you will notice is the audio and the USB cables look the same. The ports look the same. You never mind the naming. Luckily we've got naming, so thank goodness for that. But if you look very closely, guys, you will see each of them has a pin missing, a different pin. So at first glance, it looks like each of these has 10 pins, 2 rows of 5 pins each. But if you look very closely, you'll see the audio has a random pin missing out of those 10 pins, and the USB one has a different pin missing as well, but it's not in the same location. So if the naming on the cable and the motherboard was not good enough for you guys, you can also go and verify this by looking at the pins that's missing. So if you look at the audio jack on the motherboard, you'll see 1 pin is missing. And if you look at the connector that's to plug in there, you'll see one of the ports, one of the little holes is blanked out, which is correspond to the missing pin. Now before we move on to the next topic, guys, before I show you guys that video, because that's what's going to be next up, the front panel headers there way on the right. That is almost always going to be the bottom right. It's just going to be a question of where at the bottom right you will find this. This is the part that scares most people. It is the most intimidating part for most people. Now fortunately for you guys, these 4 cables, there's 4 cables by the way, that have to go connector, they're very clearly labeled. And 3 out of 4 motherboards are also very clearly labeled. Now each of these 4 cables are going to go connect to 2 pins. There's normally on average going to be about 9 pins sticking out, but it might be more, but there will be at least 9 pins. Like I said, could be more, but there'll be at least 9 pins. Each of the 4 connectors can only connect to 2 of these pins, so there's always going to be a spare pin if you want to call it that. So one of these connector cables coming from your case will normally say something along the lines of power switch. It'll say power SW for power switch, or it'll outright say power switch, but something along the lines of power switch. And on the motherboard, next to those pins, it'll often also say power switch or power SW for power switch. Now folks, if you're not sure on the motherboard which pins, it's normally the top 2 right ones. So if you look at the image I've got there, that'll be the bottom of the motherboard. The pin connectors, the front panel connectors are on the bottom right. Now looking at it from that angle, the top right pins, the top 2 right ones, those are normally power pins. The top 2 left pins are the power LED pins. The bottom 2 left pins are normally hard drive LED pins, and the bottom 2 right pins will normally be the reset button. So I would suggest maybe starting at the bottom left 2 pins. Way at the bottom left, those 2 pins are hard drive LED, HDD space LED. And then the bottom two right ones, so on the right, way at the bottom, that will be the reset button. It will say reset switch or restart button, something along those lines, but normally it'll say reset switch. So reset switch is the bottom two right pins normally. It will probably be a blue cable in most cases, not guaranteed, but from experience I can tell you it's usually going to be blue. The top two right pins directly above the reset switch is the power switch. So that's normally going to be a red cable in most cases. Also not set in stone, it's just usually. And the top two left pins are usually powered LED. So where I've told you guys where these pins are not set in stone, it's just usually from experience, those pins are for those things I've just elaborated on. But just to confirm, I would say check on the motherboard. You'll find 3 out of 4 motherboards on the motherboard right next to the pins. It'll tell you which pins are for what. If you're still not sure, you can go and search on Google or whatever for that motherboard's make and model. It'll very clearly indicate which pins are for what, and you just go and confirm. Now the power switch, guys, that's just for the power button in the front. So in reality, if you were to go and take a very small flat screwdriver and you would go and touch those two pins, the power switch, supposed to go connect, the PC would actually stop. I would not encourage you to go and do that because on some motherboards it's very sensitive. If you go do that, you'll actually blow the motherboard. Or if you have all motherboards to sacrifice to show up on your printed memory, you can go do that and you'll see the PC is actually going to start as soon as you blow the motherboard. The reset switch is for restart button. Let's take it out. The HDD LED is the hard drive light. Now some of all the complicated cases have got some sort of light in the front. It can either be orange or green. And depending on how active your hard drive was back in the day, this light would flash accordingly. So if you're doing an antivirus scan or an installation or you're copying or cutting something huge, this light would basically stay consistent. It will just stay solid. It will stay on. If you're doing a small copy or something lightweight on your hard drive, it'll just flicker a little bit. Basically all it does. It's got no real significance. My opinion is you don't even need to plug it in. And then the power LED is all the lights in the front of the case. So some of all the gaming cases and stuff or the normal office PCs, they've got lights in the front. So if you go and press the power button, you might find the power button's got some sort of little light will come on, or there'll be 1 or 2 little lights in the front of the case coming on, just to indicate to the user that the machine is actually on. With gaming computers, we obviously don't need that because you've got all kinds of fans, you can see them spinning, and they probably have RGB in them, which means that you've got fancy colored lights in them and all that. So you can very clearly see and hear of a gaming PC when it's on. But if it's an old, normal office computer, yeah, if you press the power button, unless you hit the fans, you might not know that it's on. So if the power button could at least light up in some sort of way, that's a nice indicator for the user to show, hey, look, this machine is on. And that's basically what the idea was. Alright, folks, and before we move on to the next topic, I want to show you guys on the real motherboard what it actually looks like when we go look at these components. Now, what I'm going to show you guys is an old ATX motherboard. So it's got some old, ports, not like IDE ports and whatnot. So it's not the worst motherboard, but it's definitely not the latest motherboard, unfortunately. But it should still give you a fairly good idea of, what you're in for. And that's the kind of stuff they'll ask you in the exam. The motherboard I'm about to show you is the kind of motherboard you can expect them to ask you about in the exam. It's the same ports they will ask you about in the exam. So that being said, let me switch over to that motherboard.
A few moments later.
Alright, folks, here is that motherboard I spoke of. I'm going to start you guys with the CPU. There is the CPU socket. This is for Intel CPUs. There is your RAM slots. I've got 2 of them. Some might have 4 slots for the RAM. Here is your graphics card slot that says PCIe. And here is your PCIe slots for Wi-Fi cards, modems, and that kind of stuff. Here at the bottom, there is your SATA ports. Left is for floppy. Right-hand side, you can see that's for hard drives and stuff. Those are extinct, by the way. And here on the right-hand side, there's your SATA ports. Mine are facing upwards. Some motherboards face sideways, but mine's not in the way of the graphics card, so it's not an issue. Here at the bottom left, let me just zoom in. There's your front panel audio. You can see mine's purple, but the color doesn't matter. And then here on the right side, let me just focus. Look at those yellow ports. USB 1 and USB 2. So this motherboard has 2 ports for USB. It does not matter which one you go connect to. It only has 1 cable. Some motherboards have 2 USB ports. Some will have 1. There's the front panel. Those are all connectors I spoke of for the start button, the restart button, and LED lights and stuff. One of these people, fear and all that. And way here at the top, guys, there is where you're going to go connect your CPU's fan or your liquid cooling system. So it says CPU fan or liquid cooling system. Here's where you're going to go connect your CPU's power. That's a P4. Some motherboards need way more, and it'll be here at the top left-hand side. Let me open this CPU latch for you guys. I'm going to go and open it up for you guys, and I'm going to go and install the CPU. I'll just briefly show you guys. So generally a good rule of thumb would be to hover the CPU over the CPU port and to check where on the side of the CPU you see little holes. And then just inside the port, just go check for little pieces of plastic sticking out. Alternatively, you can go check for a missing pin inside the hole and just go look for a little copper arrow. There's a little copper arrow. The copper arrow will always point towards the missing pin inside the port. But the easiest way for most people is to hover the CPU over the hole. And I'll get into focus for you guys now. As soon as you hover it over the hole, you just check where the missing holes in the CPU are and where they align with little pieces of plastic sticking out on the side. So you can see mine, bottom left, bottom right, I've got little holes in the CPU. You can see if I bring it closer. Bottom left, bottom right, there's little holes in the CPU. And inside this hole, you check closely, left and right at the bottom, there's a little piece of plastic sticking out. So all I need to do is just hover gently over the hole, gently drop the sucker into place. There we go. I'm going to close the latch now. There we go. Close the latch, close the lever, hook it into place. All it's left to do now is to apply thermal paste or thermal compound on top of the CPU. Then you can go put your heatsink or your liquid cooling system on top of it. And let me just put some RAM chips in here as well. So the RAM chips, guys, you see they can only go in one way, so you've got the right RAM. There's a little piece of plastic there, you can see the hole. That basically confirms that you've got your RAM chip incorrectly. If you've got the wrong way around, it's not going to go in. There's a little hole inside the RAM chip as well. Indentation, so I'm going to hover it there for you guys again. You can see this one's the wrong way around. It's not going to work. You see it's misaligned. So I'm going to turn this around. There we go. It aligns. So now I'm going to shove it in there. While it's open, you can see on the 2 top sides, top and bottom, it's open. You just press down, it's going to click into place automatically. You can hear it and feel it click into place on both sides. And that's it, guys. As simple as that. More on this later.
1 eternity later.
Right, guys, the next topic, as you can see, storage connector types. So I've got a bit of a picture for you guys here of a normal old school hard drive. So I suppose you could say this is the old mechanical hard drive, so some of you guys might know it. And if you look at the connectors, that should look familiar to you guys. Earlier, we spoke about the cables that you would go and plug into a hard drive. I showed you guys the data cable, and I showed you guys the power cable would normally go and connect to a hard drive. I told you guys the other end of the data cable would go and connect to your motherboard, and the other end of the power cable would obviously be connected to your power supply. If you don't remember what these cables look like, there's a bit of a reminder for you guys. So this is for your hard drives you're going to put, randomly loose somewhere in your case. These are however becoming less and less common nowadays. People are more keen on using normal solid-state drives nowadays, or they'll go and use one of those hard drives that look like a card that you go and slide into your motherboard. We normally slide into the .M2 slots, if you guys know what those are. Now, if you guys are not sure what the M2 slot is, let me show you guys a more modern motherboard. So here's a picture of the motherboard I've got in one of my PCs at home. So I built a new gaming PC here for one of my kids, and this is the MSI Pro B650-S Wi-Fi motherboard. It's a very modern motherboard, not a too high-spec motherboard, but it's a decent entry-level budget motherboard for gaming PCs. But this is an AMD motherboard, guys. This is for AMD CPUs. It's an AM5. It's compatible with some of the latest AMD CPUs there. So the CPU I put in case anyone's curious for my kids, is the Ryzen 9800X3D chip, which is the highest spec gaming CPU you can get at this point in time. So it's just really a top dog. So obviously by the time you guys watch this video, depending on when you watch it, it might no longer be the top CPU because these manufacturers like Intel and AMD and all of them are obviously constantly developing and releasing new stuff. By the time of the making of this video, this was currently the most powerful gaming CPU on the market, was the AMD 9800X3D with its gaming cache and all that. So first of all, guys, this is a bit of an overview of a motherboard. If you look at the bottom, guys, bottom left, there's 2 M.2 slots. One of them is beneath this heatsink. Yes, that's a heatsink. It's removable. And the other one's here at the bottom. It's kind of open. The one underneath the heatsink is because it's going to be directly below the graphics card. And as you guys probably know, a graphics card can get quite hot. So this one's got a heatsink. But a lot of these little hard drives, you go and slide into these slots. They actually come with their own heatsink, some of them. And if I want to, I can go put a second hard drive in here. So at the moment I only have one, which is underneath that heatsink. And if I really want to, I can go put a second one in if I want to for the kids as well. In terms of the CPU, guys, you can see there's the CPU slot there. It's got a plastic cover, so it doesn't matter if this is an Intel CPU or an AMD CPU. The motherboard only has a plastic cover. So you're gonna open that latch first, like I showed you guys earlier in real time. You're gonna drop your CPU in there very gently after you've confirmed it's aligned correctly. You're gonna close it. You don't even have to bother that plastic flap; it'll automatically shoot off. Trust me, it will. In terms of random access memory, we showed you guys how to go and insert it.
The average team spends 50% of their time doing work about work. That's a lot of dollars down the drain. Take a look at any office and you'll see the same thing. Teams trapped in pointless meetings, managers forced to provide updates, and deadlines slipping through the cracks. It's the same old cycle. Leadership need visibility, so they schedule meetings. Teams get behind because they're in meetings all day, and then when things start to go wrong, more meetings go in to work out why. But the best teams are breaking this cycle with Motion. Instead of constant back and forth, Motion gives everyone complete visibility into projects, workloads, and timelines. No interruptions needed. When someone asks for a project update, it's there. Team capacity check, right there. Deadline feasibility, already done for you. And priority changes, handled automatically. Watch what happens when an urgent request comes in. Motion instantly reshuffles based on key priorities and schedules, keeping everyone aligned without a single emergency meeting. You hear that sound? That's right. It's peace. Teams can finally focus on delivery instead of status updates. Managers get better visibility without the constant check-ins. And then the meetings that do happen are about problem solving instead of just pointless status updates. So stop wasting your time managing work and spend more time doing it. See how Motion improves your team's productivity with a free demo or 7-day free trial.
You can see on this motherboard, there is 4 slots. And we're not going to start the slot closest to the CPU. Instead, we're going to start the second closest slot to the CPU. So that will be the second one from the left there. We're going to start that slot first. And then the second RAM chip goes into the last slot there, way on the right. So we're going to go put the RAM chips into slot 2 and slot 4, which is exactly what I did with this motherboard for the kids. I put the RAM into slot 2 and slot 4. I didn't put in too much RAM. I didn't put in just 32 gigs because everybody puts in 32 gigs. I put in 48 gigs. I probably could have gone and put in 2 sticks of 32 gigs RAMs each. This motherboard does support up to 192 gigs of RAM if I really want to. But I don't need more than that. I didn't want to put in just 32 gigs because that's going to get out there quite quick. So I pushed them a little bit more. I put in 2 chips of 24 gigs each. So it's got 48 gigs, which is 2 sticks, and that's in slot 2 and slot 4 respectively. So this motherboard, if you look there, I know you guys can't see it in this image, but there's actually a picture that shows you which slots to fill in first. Now, for you guys, it might be blurry, but if you were to zoom in on the picture, it actually would have shown you there, slot 2 and slot 4 should be filled first. It actually tells you which slots to go and fill first. How cool is that? As for PCI Express, this motherboard's got 2 slots. There is the first one, which is the main one, which is the only one that most people are going to be using. Way here at the bottom is the secondary graphics card slot. Yeah, that's the second one. You'll notice there's no normal PCI slot besides the small little mini one here, which is the ×1 PCI slot. It depends on what you want to do, but a lot of the new modern motherboards these days, they don't come out with normal PCI slots. They don't. Instead, they only come out of PCIe slots. If you want a PCI slot, a normal one, you're going to probably have to pay extra for that because nobody wants that. So yeah, in terms of PCI, this one only has a small little mini one here at the bottom, the one that's ×1. The CMOS battery, you can see on this motherboard, is at the bottom right. The picture I showed you guys earlier, that little animation, the CMOS battery was where? It was at the bottom left. But this one is at the bottom right. So I told you guys, it can either be the bottom left or the bottom right. I suppose in reality, it can probably be anywhere on the motherboard, but almost all motherboards, you'll always find the CMOS battery at the bottom left or the bottom right. As for the front panel headers, there they are, they're the bottom right. That's the front panel headers, guys. It's usually going to be somewhere in the vicinity of the bottom right of the motherboard. As for the power connectors, here on the right-hand side, almost always on all motherboards, here on the right-hand side, you will find your 24-pin motherboard connector. That is the main power for your motherboard, guys. So on your power supply, you'll find only one such connector. It's got 24 pins. You always hook it here on the right-hand side. As for the CPU power, earlier I showed you guys where the CPU power was. It was directly below the CPU, right next to the CPU. It was a P4 connector, 24 pins. That's the old motherboards. The newer ones, like this one, you'll find at the top left, they'll have one or more connector. This one has got 2 8-pin connectors. It needs a lot of juice for the CPU because this CPU is obviously one of the most powerful CPUs you'll get on the market. So for all these powerful CPUs, you need a lot of juice. So those 2 connectors at the top left, that's for the CPU, guys. And it goes about saying you need a special power supply that has these connectors. Not all power supplies come with those connectors. As for USB connectors, guys, this motherboard has 2 USB connectors. The USB 1 and the USB 2. It's up to you which one you want to go and use, so it really doesn't matter. And just to remind you guys, the cables are labeled. Let me show you guys. You can see here, this cable, this is that same motherboard from earlier, it's labeled. It says USB. And your job is just to go put it in the right place on the motherboard. As for audio connectors, guys, audio connectors, also on the motherboard, you'll only have 1 or 2 connectors. The motherboard I showed you guys earlier had only 1 connector, but they might potentially have 2 or more. So you can see here on this cable from earlier, this cable clearly says audio. Your job is just to go look at the motherboard where it also says audio. Simple as that, guys. As for fan connector, you look at this motherboard here, it's got 3 of them. One of them says CPU fan, one says system fan, and one just says fan in general. So some motherboards only have 1. This one's got a lot of fan connectors. Here on the right hand side, there's another fan connector. Here on the left hand side, there's another fan connector. So in total, right off the bat, I see about 5 on this motherboard, I think. So the top there's 3, here on the right is 1, and here the bottom left, or in the middle left, there's also 1. So the one there way on the right and the one way on the left, those are normal case fan connectors. And the ones at the top, that's for CPU fan, system fan. So when mine say CPU fan, I went and connected the liquid cooling system. Because of how powerful the CPU is and how hot it gets, I need to cool this sucker properly. So instead of opting for a normal heatsink or a normal fan, I'm cooling this bugger with a liquid cooling system. I'll show you guys what that looks like once we get to liquid cooling systems and stuff. And of course, then I'll show you guys a little video of what this PC or this motherboard actually looks like with liquid cooling. You guys can see firsthand how that actually works and how I connected it. As for RGB connectors, now these gaming motherboards, guys, they've got a connector on the motherboard which looks very much the same as fans. It's for RGB. If you don't know what the RGB is, that's the lights. All of these gaming PCs in the fans, in the case, you'll find that they've got lights in the fans. Some of them are constant, it'll be a consistent red or a consistent blue or purple, but most of these fans are able to change multiple colors. That's the RGB. You can go look up what that actually is. So a lot of these cases, they've got RGB. If you look at the RAM that goes into these gaming motherboards, the RAM themselves actually have lights on them, believe it or not, that change all kinds of colors. The RAM I put on this motherboard is RGB RAM. So it's not just fast gaming RAM. The RAM's got all kinds of fancy lights. So the RAM actually glows on the motherboard. The whole freaking case I put everything in glows. Everything just glows. The graphics card glows. Everything's got RGB. And that needs to be connected to the motherboard so you can go and control the colors of all of this. Alright guys, and then as for the expansion cards, which I've mentioned quite a few times, that will be something like a modem, a sound card, a Wi-Fi card. More than likely you guys are not going to be using this, but an expansion card, guys, is a printed circuit board that is installed in a slot on a system board. This is normally your PCI slot, and it's to provide special functions for customizing or extending a computer's capabilities. This is also referred to as an adapter card, an I/O card, in other words, input-output card, an add-in, an add-on, or just a board. Most of us will just call this an expansion card. So these input-output adapters or storage cards, guys, like I said, this could be something like a sound card. That would be an example of an output card. It could be maybe an additional external network card. So this could be a NIC, maybe, network interface card. Most motherboards, including laptops, already have an RJ45 port, which is your normal network cable. So if you look at a laptop, they actually have 2 NICs. One of them is for the RJ45 port, which is where you would normally plug in your LAN cable, in other words, your normal network cable. And the other network card is the wireless one. It allows your laptop to connect wirelessly. But if you look at the fancy new gaming computer cases, a lot of them actually have wireless capability. So they technically have 2 network cards too, if you think about it. Alright folks, that brings us finally to the end of the second main section, and we're going to move into the third and the last main section. Now guys, this is the point of the video where I like to play a game with my audience. Most of you guys would know what this game is by now. I normally give you a secret word or a secret phrase. Now folks, this is completely optional. You do not need to play this game, but if you'd like to play along, the secret word for today is peanut butter. I kid you not. The idea here for you guys is to either go and type the word as is in the comment section down below, but that alone is not so much fun, or you can take the word or the phrase, today's just a word, and you can go and make a sentence with that word. If at all possible, try and keep it to IT. Now this is next to impossible, because the word peanut butter obviously has nothing to do with IT. But let's see how creative you guys can be. Make a sentence with the word peanut butter, but try and associate it somehow with IT. Let's see how creative you guys can be. Now, never mind that, what also makes this fun is anybody that's now reading through the comment section that has not watched the video up until this point, they're going to be massively confused. They're going to be wondering, why are people talking about peanut butter and this or that? They're going to be massively confused. So only for people that's actually watched the video up until this point, only you guys would know what this is all about. So it's a bit of an inside game or a bit of an inside joke. Now, you can, of course, still go and drop your normal comments down below. So if you've got a question about something in this specific module, guys, by all means, ask your question down below, and I will gladly answer you guys as soon as I possibly can. You can alternatively also join my Discord server. The link is literally the very last link in the video description. You can go join the Discord server. It's a free server. I'm in there. Other IT trainers are in there, and other people studying for A+ course are also in there. So please, by all means, join the Discord server. It's completely for free. If you've got questions, you're more than welcome to go and ask your questions there, or you can just go and ask them below, or you can do both. You can ask it in the Discord server, and you can go and ask it in the comment section. It's really your choice, guys. Right, folks, let's move on to the last section, legacy cables. So the word legacy means something is old. This can be hardware, it can be software. So with hardware, it could be something like the old IDE hard drives. Those are legacy. Or it can be cables, like an integrated drive electronics cable, in other words, IDE cable, also known as a hard cable. So there's a picture, obviously, for you guys of what these look like. The chances are very unlikely that you guys are not going to see these. You're not going to see these cables, they're basically extinct. So the old computers used to have these. You could only plug up to 2 of them onto the motherboard, and they were allowed to connect up to 4 devices in total. So it's one end of the cable connected to the motherboard. Each cable had 2 connectors. You could go and connect 2 optical drives, 2 hard drives, or a combination of 1 hard drive and 1 optical drive on one of these cables. You'll see there's a little colored strip there. So in the picture there, it's pink. That is pin 1. These cables normally consist of 40 pins or 80 pins. 80 pins was the more common one, and the pink strip is normally pin 1. That is just to indicate which side needs to face towards you. So if you've got the side panel the case off, the colored strip always faces towards you. That was just to indicate. This cable, obviously, as you guys can see, is grey, but in reality, just like the SATA cable from earlier, it could actually be any color of the rainbow. Mine used to be black, and pin 1 used to be white. But the cable itself could be any color of the rainbow. Pin 1 could be any color of the rainbow. In the day, the cable could only go plug in one way on the motherboard, so there was no incorrect way of plugging it in. If you tried to plug it in the wrong way, it simply just would not go in. If you're wondering what I'm talking about, there's a bit of a picture of a very old motherboard of what this used to look like if you want to go plug this on the motherboard. You can see there's a pin missing, and there used to be a little kick side. So if you look at this cable on the right, you can see it's got a little piece of plastic sticking out. And if you look forward here, you can see there's a little piece of plastic missing. So there's only one way it could go in. Both of those actually has a piece of plastic missing. The black one's a bit quite hard to see, but the black port and the blue port both have a piece of plastic missing. And on the cable there, you can see it's got a piece of plastic sticking out. So the cable could only go in one way. If you try to plug it in the wrong way, it would not work, guys. As for the hard drive, that's what the hard drive used to look like. So the bottom left there, guys, that is where you would go and plug that sucker in. And on the bottom right there, that's where you would go and plug in that Molex connector we spoke of way earlier in the video. That's where the Molex connector would have gone. Right, folks, still on the topic of legacy cables, let's talk about serial cables. These cables, the ports on the motherboards for laptops and desktops are extinct. So if you go look at a standard laptop or a standard desktop PC these days, you will not come across these ports anymore. Yet, we still use these cables very commonly. Now, where do we use these cables, you ask? Well, guys, you can use them as server room. These cables are also referred to as a console cable. Those are referred to as a rollover cable. Not something we actually teach in A+, not something they'll ask you in A+ exam. That is something they might possibly ask you in A+ exam, more commonly in the Cisco exam if any of you guys are going to go and do CCNA, Cisco and stuff like that. But just food for thought, it's also called a console cable, it's also called a rollover cable. So if you are in a server room, and if you guys have ever seen a server room, there's all kinds of devices in the server room, and you sometimes need to configure these devices. Now, for you to do that, you'll normally go and take a laptop in, because laptops are just easier to carry around. But the cable you're going to plug into this device, the part that plugs into the device is going to look like a normal network cable. It's going to look like it's got an RJ45 connector. Now, that's called the console cable, that's normally the more common name we use. But the part of the cable that plugs into
Pluralsight Professional Services. Align tech learning directly to business priorities. Customize upskilling plans with subject matter experts. Plus, get built-in support. Pluralsight handles all. License distribution, user troubleshooting.
to your laptop or desktop, it looks like what we see in front of us. That part, it looks like that. We call it a serial interface, a COM port. So it's called an RS-232 interface. It's also called a DB9 connector. It's also called a COM port. It's also called a serial interface or a serial port. It's got so many names, guys, it's enough to make you nauseous. These ports, many moons ago, they used to be also used for, normal PS2 keyboards and mouses, but it's been like 15, 20 years, if not more, since I've seen people use it for that. So they're only used for devices and server rooms these days. Now, since that's what the port looks like that we need to go connect to our laptop, how do we connect that to our laptop if our laptop does not have a connector like that? We are going to go and use what we call an adapter, guys. Sometimes these adapters are like small little cables. They're about the length of your hand or the length of your arm. Or one side of the connector might be USB, or it might be an RJ45 or something along those lines. The other part of the connector will be something like what we see in front of us. It's to convert one interface into another. Most commonly, we use these converter cables or adapters for video, so I can go and convert DVI to VGA, HDMI to VGA, or whatever. They're more common with video, but we can go and convert serial to something like USB or whatever as well. And that's normally what we do in these server room environments. Then, folks, another cable we get is SCSI. We just refer to it as a SCSI, but the actual official name is actually Small Computer System Interface, more commonly known as SCSI for short. So this is normally also found more commonly in server environments. They are kind of, extinct now at this point in time. I suppose you will still find them in some server rooms, the very old server rooms. So this interface is absolute, guys. Might still be found in unreplaceable legacy systems. So if you are in a server room which has got very old servers, yes, you might still find it there. These old systems, guys, might run some bespoke applications which are too risky to try and swap out. So there's a chance that some company might have some very old application and there's nothing new in the market. They've got to run that application. There's no other version out there. There's no equivalent out there. And in those cases, you might find them still using these old cables which we call SCSI. Very, very old stuff. So chances are you might never actually see these guys. Alright, folks, and then the last topic I'm going to talk to you guys about today, which is something we did briefly mention, is adapter cables. They could be cables, or it could be a little adapter that fits in the palm of your hand. The more common ones, like I said, is to convert one type of video feed to another. To convert HDMI to VGA, or HDMI to DVI, that's the more common ones. Or VGA to DVI. Now you do get other ones as well, we can go and convert, let's say, serial to USB, for instance, like we said earlier. So these are passive cables with different connectors on each end. Then you also get active cables, specifically to translate signaling between different interface types. If we look at the common one I spoke about earlier, video. That could be HDMI to VGA, it could be HDMI to DisplayPort. DisplayPort you'll often see people just referring to as DP. It could be HDMI to DVI. And if you look at USB, USB is also a common one. This could be USB Type C to USB Type A. You could go and maybe split this into a USB hub. This could be USB to Thunderbolt or USB to Lightning. Something we spoke about earlier when we spoke about Thunderbolt cables or Lightning cables, guys. Right, folks, I really hope you've learned something in Module 2 of A+. We've still got a lot of modules. We've still got 20 modules to go. Remember, the course consists of 22 modules versus only Module 2. So if you'd like to know when Module 3 comes out, please remember to subscribe to the channel. And remember to also give this video a like. It does help the video. It does help the channel when you guys do that. But before we conclude this video, guys, a special shout out and thank you to the people supporting the channel. Thank you to all the people making PayPal donations in the background. Obviously, those of you also making normal donations, buying me coffee and milkshake. Thank you to those as well. And by the way, if you want to support the channel, you can find all the information in the description down below. Then, of course, guys, the Patreons. Guys, thank you very, very much for your donations. If you'd like to become a Patreon, please go check out my Patreon. There's free plans to go and choose from at the time of the making of this video. Most of them are very cheap, and you actually do get extra courseware on there, which is not on my YouTube channel. So if you're looking for additional A+ courseware, chances are you're going to find it on my Patreon, guys. So please feel free to go check out my Patreon for additional courseware that's not on YouTube. And if you do become a paid Patreon, I'll normally ask you if you would want to have your name displayed here on this page. It's completely optional. Most people opt to stay anonymous, but if you want to have your name displayed here, just let me know. I will normally ask you. If you say yes, you can choose the name that gets displayed. It does not have to be a real name. You can go choose a nickname or something else if you want to. And then lastly, folks, for those of you that don't know, the channel does have a Discord server. I did mention it earlier in the video. That's literally the very last link in the video description, so go and check it out. It's for people that's like-minded like you. It's other people studying A+, N+, Security+, and other courses. So if you want to ask questions, you can go and ask them there. Either myself or one of the other IT trainers or one of the other students will answer you. And if you know the answer to somebody else's question, you can obviously go and answer that question as well. Maybe you just want to join a study group. We do have study groups there as well, so if you want to join a study group, check it out, guys. The link is in the video description. It's completely for free. No reason not to do it. Alright, folks, I will see you in Module 3 of the CompTIA A+ course.
Generative AI can be extremely expensive to build and train. If you want a generative solution with built-in security features and role-based access controls, an intelligence layer that can clarify and understand user intent, out-of-the-box connectors to all your enterprise systems, and an API layer that works with any front end, you'll either need to spend millions and months building it yourself, or find a partner who's uniquely positioned to deliver this capability at scale. With Coveo Relevance Generative Answering, you benefit.
Howdy folks, welcome to version 1 of the Network Plus practice questions. As you can see on the screen, these practice questions are specifically for the N10-009 version of the Network Plus exam, but they will actually also work for the other versions of the Network Plus exam. So if you're perhaps studying for an older version or a newer version of the Network Plus exam, yes, these questions will still apply to those exams as well, and you can use them to prepare for those exams. And at the end of the day, folks, the practice questions still measure you on the same skills, and they still cover mostly the same objectives. Now, in case anyone is wondering if these are the actual questions from the actual exam, no, they are not. It's not allowed by the vendor, and most vendors actually won't allow that. These do, however, measure you on the same skills and the same objectives. If you understand the actual topics and the concepts themselves, then yes, you're ready to go and write the exam. If you, however, still feel uncomfortable with some of the topics and concepts, then please do not go and write the exam just yet. I'd rather suggest for you to go study a little bit longer. Rather go study some more until you feel comfortable with all the topics and concepts you see here in these videos of mine. The idea here, folks, is for you to actually understand the topics and concepts in this course. And once you eventually have that under the belt, then you'll be fine in the exam, no matter how the vendor decides to throw these questions at you. Now, if you're not sure where to start, if you're struggling with your studies, I would suggest you start specifically with the topics you're struggling with, or you can just join my Discord server and ask for assistance there. There are always lots of folks on there that are more than willing to help you with explanations, and that includes myself. You can find that video in the video description down below. Now, speaking of the exam objectives, folks, you can actually find that very easily by just running a search in a search engine of your choice for CompTIA Network Plus N10-009 exam objectives. Alternatively, you just use the link in my video description. I'm going to add a link for you guys in the video description down below. So here is more or less what it looks like. So after I opened it, after running a search for it, this is more or less what you guys can expect to see in the exam objectives. Let me just very briefly scroll through here. So you guys can see you can have a maximum of 90 questions in this official exam. There's going to be performance-based questions. You're going to have a maximum of 90 minutes to complete that, so that's about an hour and a half. There are the domains that's going to be covered. Now, that on its own seems pretty simple. But if we scroll a little bit down, a little bit more here, you can see there's the first domain, networking concepts, and there's a subsection. So the first subsection is the OSI model. We obviously covered that already in my video course. Subsection 2, subsection 3. So you can see each of these sections has little subsections of lots and lots of topics that's going to be covered. So if you want to know what's going to be covered, what objectives you're going to be measured on in the N10-009 version of the exam, please go have a look at these objectives, and then you can get a better idea of what you're going to be tested on. Now, the video that you guys are watching right now, my aim here is to measure you guys on the same objectives, measure you on the same skills. Now, I've made 70 questions in this video, but using just 70 questions is sometimes a little tricky to test you on all of these objectives. So I might need to do 2 or 3 videos, because honestly, I don't think I covered all of these objectives. I think I missed quite a few. So I'm going to have to make a second and a third video to cover all of these objectives. But for the time being, this is the first video. This is why I say this is version 1. There's going to be a version 2 and probably version 3 as well, depending on how many questions I need to cover all the objectives. And once I've done that, then after watching those videos, you should be ready to go and write the exam. So I think that's going to help you guys a lot once I've got all those videos up and going. And I think now that we've got all of this blah blah out of the way, if you folks haven't done it already, please do your homie here a favor and like this video. It helps me and it helps the channel out. And if you folks would like to know when I release more of these practice questions, version 2 and version 3, or just in general training videos for that matter, then maybe also consider subscribing. Otherwise you might miss it. Alright folks, I think we've talked enough in this intro. Let's go look at question 1. The first question here says, you are teaching a new junior technician at Burning Ice Tech how to crimp a normal crossover network cable. Which of the following cable configurations is correct? Now what I'm going to try and achieve in this question is to see if you guys understand the difference between a straight through cable as well as a crossover cable, and if you know how to go and do the configuration for a crossover cable. You need to understand this for the exam folks, because this is something they're going to expect you to understand and know in the official exam. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do 4 drawings for you guys. So there's going to be 4 drawings, and obviously since the drawings are going to go quite fast, I encourage you guys to pause the video if need be. So once the first drawing is done, pause the video for a second or two and check the configuration, check if you think that's correct or not. Then move on to the second configuration, pause the video, check what you think of the configuration, whether you think it's correct or not. Same happens at configuration 3, same happens at configuration 4, and after the 4th configuration shows on the screen, I'm going to give you guys the 4 configurations and you have to choose an answer. After you've chosen what you think the answer would be, I'm going to let you guys know what the answer is, and I'm going to explain to you why. So there's going to be 4 drawings. Please feel free to pause the video on the drawing if you need to. If you don't, that's fine. You can just go and watch it, and you can check it out that quickly, then sure, go for it. Alright, so starting with configuration A. As you guys can see, I'm going to put 8 pins on the left and 8 pins on the right. And if you're not sure what that is for a normal network cable with an RJ45 connector. Each of these 8 pins is an RJ45 connector. So the 8 pins on the left, that's one connector, and the 8 pins on the right, that's a different connector. So this is a crossover cable. I'm going to draw some lines here. There we go. Totally random lines. It might be correct, it might not be correct. But if you understand crossover cables, you would know whether this is correct or not. Alright, take a moment, take it in. Okay, let's move on to configuration B, folks. Now, configuration B, once again, the same 8 pins on both sides. This time, there we go, I'm going to draw the lines a little bit differently for you guys. So the pins are connected differently this time. Take a moment, take it in, check if you think it's correct. Alright, I'm going to move on to configuration C now, folks. Alright, so configuration C, same story as before, 8 pins on each side. Here's the lines. Pause if you need to. Alright, after you've taken it in, let's move on to configuration D. Alright, here's the last one, folks. Configuration D, 8 pins on each side. Draw some lines, random pins. It might be correct, it might not be correct. Only I know which one's correct, and if you studied, you would know as well which one's correct. Alright folks, I'm going to take you back to my initial question, which I sucked out of my thumb. Here is the 4 configurations, A all the way through to D. Now if you paid attention, you would know which one is the answer here. So if you want, you can shout out the answer in your head now if you want to. So I'm going to tell you guys what the answer is. The answer was configuration B. Now if you don't understand why, let me bring configuration B back on the screen. There we go. I'm going to draw the lines again for you guys. There we go. Now for crossover cable, folks, pin 1 and 2 are senders. Pin 3 and 6 are receivers. And 4 and 5 just stay the same, and 7 and 8 just stay the same. They're generally used for speed and that kind of stuff. So pin 1 on the left, which is a sender, needs to go to pin 3 on the right, which is a receiver. Pin 2 on the left, which is a sender, needs to go to pin 6 on the right, which is a receiver. And the same can be said about the right-hand side. If you look at the right-hand side, pin 1, which is a sender, goes to pin 3 on the left, which is a receiver. And if you look at the right-hand side, pin 2, which is a sender, it goes to pin 6 on the left, which is a receiver. And then everything else just stays the same. So that is the configuration for a normal crossover cable, folks. That's why the answer was configuration B. Alright, cool. Let's move on to question 2. Which of the following network attacks usually takes place by overloading a server, a service, or a website with so much traffic to the point where it times out or crashes? Now, what kind of attack do you guys think that is? Alright, so here's the possible answers on the screen for you guys. Is it A, a ransomware attack? No, guys, it's not a ransomware attack. So for those of you who don't know, ransomware attacks normally goes and encrypts everything on your machine or a company's network. So if you happen to get this on your own personal laptop, one of the first things you'll notice is everything on your laptop is encrypted. Some of them allow you to browse around, some of them don't. Generally, what you'll also see is there's going to be some sort of prompt on the screen which is going to tell you to go and pay the ransom, normally the cryptocurrency of some sort, probably something like Bitcoin, and then only give you a deadline. You've got to go and pay this ransom within about 2 days, 3 days or so, failing which they threaten to go and delete all your data. If you happen to get this in a company environment, oh boy, trust me, you don't want to get that. Then you better hope you've got backups. So nowhere does ransomware overload a service, it just encrypts your data, and it wants a ransom in the form of cryptocurrency. If you look at answer B, virus, that is normally a form of code with malicious intent, and its intent is not to overload something, but instead just to do some sort of harm on your machine or a server. So it's generally code with malicious intent. So the answer is not A, the answer is not B. If you look at answer C, a DDoS attack. Now DDoS is short for distributed denial of service attack, and this is normally done by using a botnet. Now for those of you who don't know what a botnet is, it's basically a network of lots and lots of computers that's been infected with malware, and these machines that's now been infected with malware, they're doing someone's bidding. The person that created this malware, this bot network, is probably doing his or her bidding. So this person can go and use this massive network of machines that's now infected to go and crack passwords, to go and do mass phishing attacks, mass spam attacks, and mass denial of service attacks. Yep, that's the answer here, folks. So that botnet has got lots and lots of machines. There's going to be hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of even, and these machines are all going to visit the same server, the same service, or same website. It's going to visit them all at the same time, and it's going to overload this website website or server with so much freaking traffic to the point where it cannot cope with the load, and it's going to either time out or it's going to crash. Now, the last answer there, we already know it's not the answer, but just in case you guys are wondering what a rainbow table attack is, that is a form of a password attack. You get many forms of password attacks, and that's one of the least dangerous ones these days. I wouldn't say it's not dangerous, it's still very dangerous, but it's not as dangerous as it used to be, because these days we've got custom banned password lists and global banned password lists, if you guys know what that is. So a rainbow table attack is when a hacker or an attacker has got a predefined list of passwords that they know for a fact is very likely to be successful. So this list might literally just be 10 passwords, and if I know you very well, or I know your company very well, or if I understand a product or a service very well, I might know what the default passwords are, or I might know what password someone or something might use. So basically, it is passwords that's very likely to be successful. That is a rainbow table attack, folks. Alright, let's move on to question 3, folks. You are busy configuring a new switch, and you want to connect 2 ports to the core switch to ensure redundancy. Which of the following will allow you to do this? Now, if you don't know what core switch is, that's the main switch. So this pretend company of mine has got multiple switches in it, and the core switch is going to be the main switch. And the switch you're trying to connect is just one of many. Now, what this person wants to achieve here, or what we need to achieve here, is we want to go and connect multiple cables between the two switches.
May I
Normally, we
suggest
just need
that
one
we
cable. Now,
construct
if
a
something were to happen to that cable, someone unplugs it, it gets damaged, or let's say one of the ports blows on one of these switches, that's a problem, because the link between these two switches is now going to be broken. But if you've got 2 cables plugged onto both sides, that's going to give you a form of redundancy, or should I say fault tolerance. Now, looking at the list down below, folks, what will allow you to achieve that goal? Is it answer A, VLANs? Now, for those of you that don't know, VLANs is short for virtual LANs. That gives you or someone the ability to go and create multiple virtual networks inside your physical network. So if you ever find yourself in a pickle of a situation where you now suddenly need multiple networks in your building when you just have one, instead of having to go and install additional switches and additional network cables and all that, I mean, that, guys, is going to take a lot of time, a lot of effort, it's going to cost you a lot of money. Instead of doing that, why not use the existing infrastructure in your network? So instead of installing additional physical networks, you
Want to break into cybersecurity but don't have experience? The Google Cybersecurity Certificate uses real-world scenarios to teach you technical skills. You'll be able to step foot in your first job and feel comfortable and confident in the skills that you've learned in this certificate. Enroll today.
You